Welcome back, Fence fam. So good to see you. It's another great Saturday here in the Midwest. Actually, it was a bit stormy last night, but regardless, I'm glad to see you guys here. So glad that we get to do this again. I always enjoy seeing you guys in the chat. Thank you. Today's guest, I'm sure you could probably read it, but Nathan Downs. Now, Nathan has extensive experience both in manufacturing and wholesale, also with the largest fence company in Oklahoma. I'll say the largest. Maybe we should say one of the largest, but you get it. Also, he's got his own business interests too. So it's a wealth of knowledge from a pretty wide bandwidth. So join me in welcoming, isn't that what the professionals say, I think? Join me in welcoming Nathan Downs.
Good morning. What's up, Joe?
How much? How are you?
Hey, I'm great, buddy.
I'm trying to get better at my intros. I'm working on it. I should practice that more.
That's awesome.
I'm going to commit to practicing.
I'm hoping we're the biggest. I mean, there's some pretty big companies out this way. So
I felt pretty good saying it, but then I was like, I guess we should say one of.
I definitely know in our market up in Tulsa in the northeast portion of the state.
Yeah.
Pretty sure we're soundly in first place up here, but there's some movers and shakers down there in the city. That make some waves. So
and that's what ran through my head. I was like, OKC, maybe there might be some big fellas down there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Nathan, thank you so much, first and foremost, for taking the time to come on. I'm stoked. I really
absolutely
am.
Buddy. I appreciate you having me on. I hope everybody that watches this live or down the road can take some nuggets away from what we're going to talk about today for sure.
Agreed. So, guys, one thing, too, if you have to go, we actually started a completely separate channel just with clips of this live broadcast because I get it. These things can get kind of long. But what we do is, I say I'm using the royal we, Jeremy and Will, clip out about 3 to 5 minute segments of this, like the highlight reel, if you will, and add it over to the clips channel. For more information on that, find the description below if you're watching on YouTube. First and foremost, before we get into it, because I know once we get going, we probably won't stop. So we need to say hi to people now. We did a session yesterday where we were checking audio and video and all that stuff. That thing went for like an hour, just chit-chatting. So I could see this running kind of long. First comment of the day, Project Metal Music is here once again from the UK. Welcome. Good afternoon across the pond. Greg in Chicago's checking in. Welcome, Greg. I'm not saying it. I have children, and we watch Dora the Explorer, and I'm not going to do it. This is my time. I almost said Marco. Mark, this is my time. Okay. Hello, Mark. Welcome. Kasurk, all the way from Philly. Welcome, Kasurk. I think we're heading up in the spring to see you guys, if I'm not wrong. The one, the only, Kenny Dugan. Hello, Kenny in Texas. Michael, hello from the Great White North. Got snow on the ground, and now it's raining in Michigan. No, thank you. I'm a hard pass on snow for sure. Landmark Creations, hello. How are you? You'll be seeing Landmark Creations names more here in the next little bit. We've got some exciting news to announce with him. Heritage Fence Company, hello, and happy holidays from Eastern Pennsylvania. Hello, Heritage. Ideal Fence LLC. Hey, Fence fam. Looking forward to today's episode. I'm representing the NCI, North Central Indiana. We learned this area. If you guys, so Ideal Fence is taking some of what we talk about here on the channel and is implementing that on his Facebook channel, doing a Ask a Fence Geek Friday. I like that so much. Or Ask a Fence Nerd. Something like that. Either way, it works, and I like it a lot. You guys should check out his Facebook page. And, of course, Roger's here. Howdy back at you, Roger. Nathan, last night, did you guys get any of those crazy storms?
Negative. It all went north to you guys. And east, apparently.
It was tornado warnings all night long, and we had watches a couple times, had the sirens go off, which means like for the next month, it's going to be, hey, do you guys do fence repairs? I have 2 panels that blew over. That's what it's going to be. I've already had 2 of those. 2 of my friends messaged me this morning. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't think anyone that, I guess the guys down south that deal with hurricanes and on the East Coast can appreciate that. But yeah, where we're at in Tornado Alley, oh my gosh, it's a nightmare. What's funny is I've been at companies that haven't had repair crews, and you can just imagine the conversations are just, yeah, it's exhausting. It can be for sure.
I sent out a script this morning. I just typed it out. I was like, oh man, looks like you guys really got hit. We do repairs. The minimum is X for friends and family, which you qualify for. If anybody else asks, the minimum is Y. Let me know. We'd be glad to help you out. And then I sent that out via Slack to the whole team. I was like, just plug this into your phones because for the next 2 weeks, this is going to be the reply.
Yep.
All right. Well, enough about the weather. Nathan, I want to talk to you because you had made a comment a couple years ago at the AFA Midwest chapter meeting, the annual meeting there at I just lost it. At
Shangri-La?
Shangri-La. Yeah, that's right. We were around. They have like a nice little not campfire, but like a fire pit situation. Yeah. We're having cigars, maybe a little bourbon. That was a good conversation.
Absolutely.
And you said something that stuck with me. You said something to the effect, and I'm going to paraphrase, of, a lot of guys and gals, a lot of companies will try to promote their foreman into a sales position. I learned long ago, you hire closers. You don't necessarily hire fence professionals. Now, sometimes a fence professional can be a closer, but that stuck with me in the back of my mind, and it's just been like rattling around back there. It was like closer, like that's right. So can you expand a little bit in the beginning just on that general principle or philosophy?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think the bulkhead of that is what I've seen over the years of working with other fence professionals and really other companies is that often you have a lot of sales individuals that are just older guys that came from the field. They've been plucked out of the field. They don't want to build anymore. So now they're automatically a sales guy.
Of course.
And it's so narrow-sighted, but it's been done that way for 50 years in our industry. Yep. And that's not just fence. I mean, that's a lot of trade industries, even your management and stuff like that. It's just like, well, I've been here 10 years. I've been here 20 years. I've done this out in the field. Well, now I must be the boss. Now I'm the operations manager. Now I'm the general manager. Now I'm the salesperson. I'm heading up all of the leads coming in. But like I said, in today's environment, in today's economy, that just doesn't work anymore. And very often what I've run across is that these guys are older, typically guys too, right?
Sure.
But they are not what you would expect if you wanted to put the best foot forward for a professional, like, hey, we're not just a fence company. And that's one of the things I think as service in trade industry providers we need to do anymore is really present ourselves as that professional.
Sure.
You mentioned the AFA, the American Fence Association. I mean, that's why coming up now, here in a couple of days or whatever, I'll start my tenure as the Midwest chapter president that you and I are both a part of.
Yep.
And stuff. But that's why I'm passionate about where we're at and where we're going, because I see that there's such room for improvement, such a vast opportunity to just continue to elevate the industry, and everything that you and people like Mark, Caleb, like all these guys across the country, what we're doing online, what we're doing just as a presence, as a community, as a group, is pushing that envelope forward. And that's what the AFA is really concentrated on, is trying to synergize all this energy. But with that being said, it all comes back to, I think the premise for us to start the conversation is it comes into, we need to make a conscious choice to be different and to not just do things the way that we've always done. And the key point with that one in that conversation was, we're taking our foreman, they're getting older, we make them a salesperson. Like how does that work?
Yeah. Not well a lot of times. Especially, and not saying anything about anybody, but especially as there's more technology being brought into the office, whether it's communication with the field, sometimes that happens, but usually it's bringing technology into the communication with the clients and inside the office, just make sure everyone has the same pictures, the same videos, the same documents. And so that's an area where I could see some folks struggling with, right? It's just the adoption of new technology, and just the pace is picking up, right? The pace of
Absolutely.
adoption is picking up.
Well, and that's one thing, Joe, that we've seen even at Empire Fence out in Tulsa, Oklahoma here. Since I came and started working with those guys 6 years ago, we've tripled the size of the company, and they were pretty good long before I got here. A 65-year-old company, family owned, family operated, and stuff like that. And to see the growth that we've had since I stepped foot in the door, but that was one of the things that I noticed was from day one, the lead salesperson in our company was originally one of the crew leaders for 16 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I walked in the door, they were doing, I don't think I have one anymore on my desk, but they were doing like, paper estimates, like the 3-piece paper estimates, the NCR forms and stuff. Everything was on paper. Then it would kind of get transcribed into QuickBooks, and then it would try to be, they try to make it look like it was, like, hey, we're in the 21st century. But in reality, everything was still done on paper copies and just handwritten notes and stuff like that.
Sure.
And they were able to do, $3 million plus a year. I mean, wow, that's awesome. But that was because of the team, the production, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, later, all that stuff. But so I step in and I'm like, oh, I can't believe you guys don't have a CRM, which is some type of software or program to keep track of things, to notate things from customers. And then we made a couple more key hires, and completely now it's flipped on its head, right? It's completely different. It's all, everything's lots of automation, lots of technology. But what's funny is, so that sales rep that was at Empire is now the operations manager. Okay. And he's learned some of the technology, but to be honest, if we had kept him in a sales role with what we are doing now, you're 100% right. There's no way. Like, he's like, I'm not doing that computer crap. And you're like, all right, man. I was like, but we could have never grown to the capacity that we're at today if it wasn't for those tools and, utilizing that technology for growth.
Yeah. And so a comment came through, basically it says, well, let's talk about it, because I'm sure this thought is out there, right? Not a fan of sales folks that don't know fencing. Never will be. Started as a green 18-year-old, I'm assuming 40 years in business. I've enjoyed many positions. Good luck. So I don't know that we're talking about plucking someone just out of thin air, right? And just dropping them into sales and saying best of luck with you.
Right.
Right. So
I think that's a valid point. What was his name?
Greg.
Yeah, I think Greg made a valid point there. There are things you can't just take someone and put them in our business, again, any trade business, and they're going to be successful with, like, it's not as easy as a My Salesman.
Sure.
Right. It's a great tool. It's a great tool.
Love it.
But I have to take the guys and go out there and train them about what are you looking for. And that's where an advantage of, like what Greg's saying, an advantage of having an installer become a salesperson would be the experience. They can see things out in the field. However, that, I hate to say this is going to, like Greg, it's going to offend some people. Yeah. Those are trainable, teachable mechanisms in the process that you can look for. Now, that doesn't mean everybody is going to get it, because I have had guys that have worked in my teams that on the sales side that they don't have that aptitude for it. And quite often what I still suggest, and this is, everyone has a different way of doing it on their teams, but I think actually hiring a new salesperson and sticking them shadowing and actually helping a crew for a number of weeks, whatever makes appropriate sense for you guys, would be a wise thing, because they've got to understand the grind, like especially how we're bidding jobs, because everybody bids jobs different. We don't want to get into that too much today, right? But there is still a labor factor there that you won't appreciate until you do it yourself. Someone like me, I'm pretty technical. My aptitude's a little higher, mechanically inclined. I don't need to go out and install fence for 5 months. I've installed plenty of fences over time, right? But like, if you ever, like, was I ever on a crew? Nope. And I've done this for over 15 years, in different mechanics, but like
Yeah.
I can go out now. I know every obstacle that I need to be aware of for my guys. And it goes a long way, because that, I think, in our business, that is one of the areas, that's where you can get caught up.
Yeah.
But having someone that has the skill set beyond just like, well, I know there's a retaining wall here, or the tree roots are going to be a problem. Hey guys, that's extremely teachable. Doesn't seem like it, but it is extremely teachable. It's harder to take that person that, like what Greg's talking about, that's been out in the field for, decades, and teach them sales, especially at a later time in their life. It really, honestly, really is more difficult. But hopefully by the end of the conversation today, we give everybody enough ideas and thoughts and things just to look at within their own teams, or if you're expanding and with everything that's going on, that we'll have some nuggets there to kind of chew on for sure.
Yeah. I think a more appropriate path would be to like a field supervisor. So if there's multiple crews, your rock star crew chief that is done building fence, just done with it. Field supervisor makes sense, right? So being in charge of 2, 3, 4 crews, checking in with them every day. What do you need? What can I bring you? Meeting with the customers, that sort of thing. Or a project manager, project coordinator, something like that. Both of those really need someone that knows exactly what they're doing and has experience doing it. In terms of sales, now, I don't want to say that every crew chief will not make a good salesman or salesperson, right? Like there are exceptions to the rule. There has to be. But I think this idea, so I think really what we're talking about is, the crew chief that comes in, the foreman that comes in and says, I'm done. And we say, whoa, I don't want to lose you. So how about you sell fence, right? That's the conversation that we're trying to get away from,
right?
Because that guy or gal didn't really come with a thought of becoming or staying in sales, right? They just wanted to come in the office. They're tired of being in the field. They want to do something else. And sales is typically the easy button to push. Say, well, fence. Well, you can sell fence. Sometimes those are two different skill sets.
Absolutely. Well, and it depends on where your goals are too. I think as a company, I mean, that's what we need to look at as teams and figure out where we're at, where we're going.
Sure.
And does just plugging someone in a scenario like that, does that make sense and work for the vision of where we're going? And if you don't have a vision, without a vision, the people perish. And especially in business, right? I mean, we got to have a vision and idea of where we're going. But yeah, I don't think this conversation, I don't know, it doesn't diminish anyone that does do it, but I hopefully, like, we can all agree that everyone typically thinks that sales is the easy spot, right? It's like, that's like, oh yeah, anybody can be the salesperson and stuff.
Yeah.
And there is some merit to that, depending on what your business model is.
Sure.
I've talked to some of the people in our market where a lot of these guys are, I actually view them more as order takers, right? Like the customer knows they need 100 feet of fence right here and a gate, and all right, 100 feet of fence, figure out what your costs are, what's the markup, do all that stuff, done. They just give them a price and go on to the next one.
Sure.
And that's a model too. But if you want to really like stand out, really want to accelerate growth and stuff, I think that's where we have to look at actually, like, there is a lot of value in having someone that is a sales professional, like understands like what closing is, how to talk to people, how to, I was on a Facebook Live or podcast or whatever with Cannon Johnson and Dan Blanc a couple months ago. Yeah. And we were talking about like prospecting and like how to identify a customer or one of your employees, a team member, your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Like just how to identify things about people's personalities, and then how to be able to talk to them on a level that's going to engage them in whatever conversation you're having. And I remember Dan being like, "This is crazy. I've never thought about this stuff ever." And he's been a successful business owner for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
But I'm like, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's not okay. Like, and that's where, especially on the front end of the business, whether it's your admin, people answering the phones, putting in all the leads, or your salespeople. Having that next step, that evolution, is important, and that could be your foreman out in the field, that could be your crew leader. But man, you just got to, you know your people.
Yeah.
But I think that tried and true model of like plucking someone out of the field and then training them back. I mean, the amount of time that's going to take to really make someone a professional on the front end, it takes some time. I mean, it should take 6 months to a year, easy.
Sure.
And not
Absolutely.
everybody. Some companies have that flexibility, and some don't. So
sure. Well, and this is kind of related to a similar conversation in that, talking about crew chiefs in general or foremen in general, where you don't necessarily get to be crew chief or foreman anymore just by being the guy that's been there the longest or gal that's been there the longest. Which that's another tried and true method of, he's been here the long, so-and-so moved off. So that was a crew chief. Now you've been here the longest now. So you get to be crew chief. Some guys don't want to be crew chief or foreman. They just don't. We had a guy that he had kind of expressed interest in becoming a foreman, I think for the paycheck because it came with the raise.
Sure.
But then once we put him in that position, he's like, no, I don't want the iPad. I don't want to deal with any of that. I just want to build fence. Okay. Like we had that position available. That's the position you were in. But a crew chief has a few more responsibilities. They're responsible for taking pictures on site, for being in control of the iPad. That way they're communicating with the client. They're communicating with the office. They're checking all the documentation. He was not a fan of technology. But we falsely put him into the crew chief position for a little while, thinking that, well, he's been here forever. He knows exactly what he's doing. And he did. It's not that he didn't know what he was doing. He just wasn't comfortable in that position. And I think that's a trap we kind of fall into occasionally.
Absolutely.
So Shane kind of had an agreeing opinion here. Sales reps spend a minimum week in the field to learn the process paths. I think that's important. I would take that a step further and say something like quarterly. They should probably spend a week a quarter in the field with a crew, just because. So we have monthly meetings where we'll all get together and everyone sits around the table and we talk about what's working, what's not working, that sort of thing. And that has helped the communication between the crews and the office. But I think it's important for the sales professional to spend time consistently on this crew to see, oh, okay, when you told me this, this, and this, now I understand. Like I have firsthand knowledge of why there's some pain points there. Because I think it's easy to fall into the trap of like, listen, I get it. It's new. We just need to do it. Like this is just the way it needs to go. So I agree, Shane. A week, I like a couple weeks up front. Send them out for a couple weeks. They see a variety of projects. They see a variety of areas, different scenarios and situations, but then recurring field work too, I think is always good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Shane's on the right path, because I know with my guys, as we've brought in new people on my teams, really I like to even block out time in their schedule to go out on hard jobs. So like if we know that a crew is going to be starting a job that was, we have a lot of flat areas around here. We have a lot of elevation. Like our terrain is crazy. It goes from sandy loam to just clay, like red clay that's terrible, to slate and sandstone. I mean, so we've got the whole gamut of every type of soil condition known to man. But there's like areas in town, like, if I go into the Osage Hills area of our work space, like it's going to be sandstone. Like it's just going to happen. Mark it up. Know that you're going to have to bring in some different tools, to get that done. And we still use, I know a lot of you guys are using, different heavy equipment and stuff like that. Man, I've got guys out with little beavers, rock bars, and post hole diggers. And we got some old school stuff, but that's the way the guys want to do it, right? They're like, I don't want a boxer. I don't want to skid steer and stuff. That's fine. If you want to break your back with it, I'm like, hey, I'm not the one putting it in. But having that information and like teaching the guys with that kind of stuff, I think will make them appreciate it more. And I still like to see our sales guys go out and touch jobs that we knew could be a challenge. And I'm like, if you think it could be a challenge and we see on the work order that there are, we got the same stuff. We got all the pictures and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I actually will schedule that out or even go to suggest to some of the guys that aren't on my team. I'm like, you should put a couple hours ahead that morning when they go out there to start this thing so you can really get a feel for what it takes to, dig in this area or what they're looking for, under the whatever the specific conditions are. But that infield training is invaluable for most people. They've got to have that hands-on. I think that's a key.
For us, it's gates, right? So it's what do you look for when you're telling a customer where a gate can and can't go, or which direction it can or can't swing.
Yes.
That's for us, particularly for a little while, that was a pain point,
Yes.
and it's when you look back on it, you understand like it's easy to just skip right past that. Yep. Gate goes here. You got plenty of opening. Gate goes right here. No problem. Want it to swing out? Sure. Those gates swing out all the time. No problem. And then the crew gets there. They're like, okay, but if we swing it out, you can't get the full opening. Like it'll go 90%, but it won't go full open. Now, if we swing it in, this baby can swing past full open, with the right hinges on it. So, it's little stuff like that. It's details that are easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah. If you haven't done it, like how would you know if you've never done something? You'll look at. I had that happen with one of my guys about 6 months ago. He had never done. We were doing a big chain link gate. It was like an 18-foot opening, 6 foot tall. And we're putting an operator on it and all that jazz, right? So like he knew that he couldn't swing it in because of the grade. Like the grade was like this and the gate's here, right? So you got to swing it out. Okay, common sense. But the only reason he knew that was because the grade was, 30% incline or something like that. Yeah, so it's like, all right, common sense would tell you. But what he didn't see was though it was like this, it was also like this. So I end up with a trapezoidal gate when we're all said and done because dadgummit, this thing's 30 inches above grade and everyone's looking at me and I'm like, so the guys asked, what happened? And I said, what happened is our sales guy didn't understand, didn't pay attention, or didn't know that it's not just the incline coming at a fence or a gate, it's the incline going in line with it as well. So the math that it takes and stuff like that. And I think that's probably the kind of stuff maybe that Greg was talking about originally, is because if you don't do it, you will never know that that's a thing until you do that. And my guys are great at following the work orders. So I love them for the fact that they built that damn thing perfectly square. And I'm like, what are we doing? I'm freaking out. What are we doing? And they're like, oh, well, I'm sitting there going, guys, like you knew. And they're like, well, but the work order.
But the work order said.
I get it. And I'm like, hey, tear that one down. Let's build a new one. So then I had to have a conversation with the client about, I want to build the gate on a rack. I want to do all these things, and then I took a picture. We use a lot of annotations on pictures for clients because as technology again has progressed, I think that's the easiest way for me to explain it to someone. Like it's like I'll take the picture, literally draw the gate, and then put an arrow, and I'm like, this is how it'll swing. This is how. Oh, okay. So then it was a teachable moment for my sales guy to come back and be like, hey, man, I know you didn't see this, but these are the things we need to be, aware of.
Sure.
And then dialing that into prep instead of letting the crew go out there and die on that hill with them knowing they're calling. And I forgot what was wrong, but anyways, they called the sales rep. Then they called me and they're like, oh, this isn't right. But I was like, I'm busy, guys. You got it figured out. And they're like, all right, I said, just go off so I'm like, go off the work order. It's going to be fine. And they're like, okay. And then that's where we get. So we've all experienced that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I know I've done things like that myself where you're like, oh, this is a good idea. Doing double gates on an incline. Yeah, there's certain, right? It's like, is that not the bane of most of us out there? Because especially as installers, you're like, don't. And you're like, oh, well,
because you'll be back.
You're going to be back.
Like, I'll do this exactly right.
Yeah.
And I'll be back to adjust something. Like, there will be some sort of something here that somebody's not happy about.
Right.
We'll be back. But it's funny. So my granddad, so talking about work orders, my granddad got to a point where he was just like a figure it out type of guy. So he'd be like, here's the project. He'd hand you the work order. You're like, oh, well, looks pretty straightforward. You'd get out there and you're looking at it, you're like, this is not it at all,
Right.
actually. And you'd call me like, hey, what was the plan for this, and this? Figure it out. You boys are smart. You know what you're doing. But talking about work orders and sales reps, I think we can kind of get in that rut too of seeing a name on a work order and going, oh boy, here we go. We're going to have to really put our thinking caps on and get out our MacGyver knives, or else this is just not going to work well at all.
Sorry, I'm trying to get that glare out of my camera there. Oh, that's better.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so we're not saying just pull people blindly out of thin air, drop them in a sales role, and it'll be all gravy, because that will be a nightmare. It really will. But you need to have someone with, to your point earlier, a sales skill set. Now, you could have someone on your team already that has that skill set, whether it's, that communication, that really great communication skills and follow up and all that. You can have that person already, but if they don't have those skills, there's probably a better spot suited for them somewhere else in the company. Like I said, a field supervisor or a project coordinator, something like that I think they would be happier at it, because here's the thing is, no one likes to be not great at something. Right.
Yeah.
That leads to burnout faster than anything. Someone that says, all right, I told him I could do it. I've tried figuring it out. I don't do it. I get it wrong occasionally, and that makes me feel horrible. And then no one's happy, right? Like, you're unhappy because they're not performing well. The crews in the field aren't happy because things are constantly getting switched or messed up or whatever. They're not happy because they know they're not performing at a high level. It's just a loss for everybody across the board. Whereas if you found a position that was more set for more fitted for their skill set, everyone's happier for it.
Exactly. And it does take, for everyone thinking about this too, it does take a period of time to learn sales and do it the right way.
Yeah.
I think that's being a sales guy, of course I'm going to say that, right?
Sure.
But I think it's underappreciated skill in the marketplace to actually be able to identify a customer, listen and understand, provide a solution. So I'm more solution-based sales than anything.
Yes.
And it takes so long to get there. Like, everybody you could say that, oh yeah, you could go to a class or something like that. Man, I promise, when you're in the field, in the real world with a customer, like, if you're not completely versed and trained in, like, okay, I heard what Mr. and Mrs. Client said, but I know that they're saying this, but really there's something else over here that's causing this to be said. But if you're not versed in sales, you're going to think that this is the problem.
Yeah.
That ain't the problem. It's this over here. So that kind of stuff is like fundamental in understanding and finding. And the hard part about this whole conversation, Joe, is it is not apparent when you talk to someone if they have any of these skills or not. Yeah.
Right.
It's like, really isn't. Like, you have no idea. Like, they could sound awesome, and then or what a lot of times what I've run into is, a lot of times people will think, if you start talking about, well, I'm going to hire a salesperson, they'll immediately go to, oh, well, are you going to go around the local car dealerships today, get some used car sales guys, and I'm like, the snake oil type stuff, and I'm like, man, like, that's maybe what sales was 20 or 30 years ago, but I'm like, that's not what it is anymore today. And I like to talk about solution-based sales, where we're actually just solving problems. Like, if I think about that from the ground up, that will give me all the answers that I need for that client. If I find out what are the 3 things that really affect you today. And if you set up the way you're talking to people, or you're converting, if you're going to convert team members into sales, or you're going to hire in for sales, like, understanding yourself, like, man, that's really, like, that's the type of person I want. I want someone that's a problem solver. I want that solution-based focus, and then figuring out how you can weed through people to see if that's really like, are they more into that or are they not? Because I'm like my personality, like I'm not, I'm a people person enough because I'm extroverted, but like care factor, I'm like, yeah, I don't really care. Like I'm like, we're buddies. I care about you, Joe. But if I
Yeah.
didn't know you, I'd be like, yeah, don't die. I mean, like a
Sure.
very unsympathetic on that end.
Sure.
Just to the general. So why I say that is because I'm more focused on, especially on the sales perspective of like, I don't care how it makes you feel. Like, your feelings don't matter to me. But if you have a pool and you're specifically telling me you want to protect those grandbabies that you now have from falling in that pool, if I provide you a pool fence or ornamental iron solution to protect the patio, protect around the whole pool, whatever that is, you don't like the price, you don't like the way it looks, I don't care. Like that's not, because I'll remind my customers, like straight up, tell them that, hey, I understand how you feel right now, but what I found is like these concerns you have about the aesthetic and stuff like that, you've already told me that that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is safety. So we are going to do something. Which one of these do you like better? Or,
Sure.
which one could you stomach more from that aesthetic standpoint, that suddenly it's and then it's like, and then the money, all that stuff. It's an
Yep.
investment, but what's the investment for? I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you have a pool and you're already concerned about it, put the damn fence up. Like I'm very unsympathetic about it. Like I'm like, hey, you called me. I'm the professional coming out here to help you.
Yep.
And I would tell my guys on the team the same thing. Like the guys or gals, I'm like, hey guys, let them know. Like they contacted us because inherently deep down, they have a desire that needs to be filled with a service or a product that we can provide. So let's do that. Like we're not going to waste their time. We're not going to waste our time. Let's figure out what that is and get it done and just make it happen. And that is a skill that can be taught, but it takes a long time to do that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a good point. Like you have to have thick skin, right? You have to have thick skin because
right.
You know as well as I do. So, case in point, we had a client in yesterday who was furious because they asked for a commercial grade fence so their dogs wouldn't get out. Beautiful. Put up a 6 foot, 11 gauge fence, bottom wire, the whole thing. Well, they came in furious because their dogs kept getting out and they had pictures. They have American pit bulls. The 1-year-old is about 120 pounds. So these things are big. And if I were going to guess, based on the scenarios they told me how they got out, they're probably aggressive dogs. So we're going back. We're going to put 9 gauge in, and we're going to put a bottom rail across the bottom.
Yep.
Just let's be done with it, But here's the thing. And so I thought we talked all this through, and here's the solution I think will work. What do you think? And all that. And at the end of it, no bubbles, no troubles. He goes, here's the thing. He goes, I'm just moving into this house. He goes, you guys got caught up in the middle of a bunch of stuff. Said my termite inspection failed. I've got termites in this house. The septic, I didn't get the septic inspected. The septic's full. I got to get that pumped out. And you almost have to have thick skin because you get thrown in the middle of situations that aren't even necessarily related to you.
Yeah.
But it's not my fault the guy's got termites. It's not my fault he's got to get a septic pump out. But we happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he came in fired up that, we were just wrong. He asked for a commercial grade fence and he got this stuff. Like, well, hold on. 11 gauge to us, 6 foot 11 gauge is a commercial fence.
Sure.
We can do 9 gauge, but I mean, as well as I do, the difference between 6 foot 11 and 6 foot 9 is about twice as much. In terms of cost for the actual fabric. So we're also doing a little bit of what's best for the customer.
Right.
Now, could we have asked about the dogs? Yes. Yeah. What dogs are we keeping in? So when Sarah did the pre-walkthrough, it was during the closing process. Dogs weren't there. It was an empty yard. He said, hey, I want a 6 foot because my dogs can jump. Okay. Well, lots of dogs can jump, no problem. maybe some more probing questions could have been asked, right?
Yeah,
And
sure. So
no harm, no foul, but let's talk about what we can do in the future
right.
to figure that out.
Yes. So Sarah was the one that did it?
Yeah.
So like Sarah, like here's the thing, and this is what I found with myself. Yeah, I do that one time. I will never forget that happened after the one mistake that I made. So
Yep.
awesome. So
Yep.
I'm excited when my guys make mistakes on the front end like that are fixable mistakes.
Yep.
Because now they're going to have an experience where dadgummit, if they hear dogs in 6 foot tall, and I'll ask that question because I've done it so long.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
oh, I know where this is going. Like, I'm insufferable. Like, because people are like, I can tell my own clients, they're like, I really don't. Do I need to tell you this? And I'm like, because it's going to be the difference between me going, listen, we can, you got some Jack Russell Terriers, they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But if you tell me you have 100+ pound pit bull or German Shepherds or even labs, like I've now figured out because of being in the field, I know which dogs like to tear up gates. So there's something that a lot of us don't think about too, right?
Sure.
Those dogs see you come in and out of that damn gate all the time, right? And if that dog gets a little taste of that chain link, they will rip that gate into a gajillion pieces because they know that is how I get out.
Yep.
And if I can figure out I can manipulate that fabric, of course, because the wire is the easiest part for them to mess with. That I've had German Shepherds destroy gates. And we're like, all right, we're going back to 8-gauge fuse bonded black.
Rip
that up, you little bastard. And then, and literally like having this conversation with clients. Guess what? Put that up. The dog goes to the gate one time. He's like, all right, well, this isn't like, tinfoil anymore. So it's a little harder. Hurts my teeth. I think we're done here. I don't like chain link anymore.
I'm going to go find somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're like, well, now the chain link, they figured out that they're like, I'm not really going to mess with it. I can't tear it up like I used to.
Well, and
go ahead.
That's just what I told these people, though. I was like, listen, so we're going to do this, and that will stop this problem. Just so you know, they're going to go find a problem somewhere else. Like they want out. That is the main thing here, right? They want out. They're going to work because they've got all day. These people work, right? So they give these pups love in the morning. They feed them, they water them. Out in the backyard they go. It's a wooded yard. Like they can stay out all day until they get back from work. This dog has nothing to do all day but work on this problem. Right. Their problem is they want outside the yard. And they're inside the yard. So they need to figure this problem out. Like, not for nothing. Like, we'll do it. I will not give you any sort of guarantee that says they will not get out.
Sure.
Because it sounds like your dogs are intelligent. Like they know how to get out of this fence now, and they've been out. Right. Like they know that is obtainable now. So they'll just work at this, and it could be them trying to rip siding off your house. It could be breaking through a door, like to get in the house, like whatever it is. This problem will continue. Now, I hope it's not the fence's problem anymore. I would love that a lot.
Right.
But just so you know, like it's not, the fence isn't the problem.
Sure. So what do you guys do, Joe, in that scenario? Because I've heard a lot of people do different things, different approaches to that solution. How do you guys handle the upcharge and the redo factor? I mean,
So we charge for the wire, and we're splitting the trip charge. Just from the customer's perspective, they said they needed heavy wire and this and that. So they felt like they adequately communicated to us and we misunderstood.
Sure.
Now, from Sarah's seat, she heard I need a 6-foot commercial fence to keep my dogs in. 11 gauge is commercial wire. We use it on commercial projects all the time. And 6-gauge smooth wire down the bottom, hog ring to the fence. That's an adequate solution too. Both Sarah and this customer believe in their hearts that they're right. Right. So, and that's what I told him. I was like, listen, it's here on the proposal is 11 gauge. It's here on the work order is 11 gauge. You got 11 gauge. So technically we did this right.
Right.
However, I understand that this is not a solution that's working for you. So we can do 9-gauge wire. So you pay the difference in the wire, and we're going to bring that 11 gauge back and turn it into construction panels. Like,
that's no problem. You have a use for it. Sure.
Yeah. So difference in cost of the wire.
Yep.
And how about we split the trip charge? Like that's me saying that we should have asked more probing questions, and this is a good learning opportunity. And ultimately, he was fine with that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we approach it.
Yeah. So the way we do it often is I'll go back and say, all right, well, to the contract, here's what you bought, regardless. And the bad thing about this, I think for all of us as professionals, is we know our product, but very often our customers have no clue what we're talking about. Yeah. And so that you get in these scenarios like this, right? Where you're like, well, I didn't see a sample, so I didn't really know that 11 gauge. I thought 11 gauge was the one like this, not the one like this,
And this guy works at a place that has a fence that's 9 gauge.
Gotcha. So he's thinking commercial. What I've done, I get it. I mean, again, you can see this if you take a step back and you look at the 30,000 foot view of the situation. You can see, like you said, both of them are right, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that's not gonna. Having both of them be right isn't going to solve anything for you as a business owner or someone running a company. Because what we've done in the past, and often when I get in these situations, is I'll go in and say, all right, let's go the difference in materials. So if you would have just bought the right thing, and then the labor side of it and stuff like that, I just eat it, because I'm like, I try to go over and above to show them that we want to make this right. Sure. And often I do find that it is going to be something that was probably some type of miscommunication on some level. But there was one this last year, this past summer, where we had a customer that said that they wanted a fence track style fence, right? Mm-hmm. And they wanted it top level all the way across the back of their yard. Well, it said top level with a step. Right. It said that on the contract, on their drawing, drawn out. Right. But they kept saying they want top level. They went all through the entire process, signed off on everything, signed off on the drawing, showing them clearly that it was going like this across their yard. And they're like, well, you guys were the cheapest. Of course we were, because I guarantee we're the only ones that put the step in there, even though you said top level. But I was like, I see where my salesman was coming across. Yeah. He was trying to, provide them. Oh yeah. We were trying to provide a solution that was more cost effective, because already the material is, awfully expensive, right? It's a premium product. Absolutely. But that's not what they wanted. But the problem was they had signed off on every DocuSign all along the way, knowing that they were getting the wrong thing. Yeah. And that they were going to do this in the end. Yep. And that was a conversation we had to have. So in that scenario, I had to come back and go, all right, well, the right thing to do would be either leave those posts and you pay for the posts, or we just rip it all out and just go on our way and you find someone else to do it. And so they drug their feet for 2 months. And I'd follow up and be like, what are we doing here, guys? Yeah. What's the plan? We got to do something. We can't just never do anything or bring someone else in, or, and at that point, of course, we, as much as them, we're all tired of each other. You're like, I was like, this is ready to move on. You're never going to say anything good about me or my team. That's fine. Let's just, let's just get out of here and go on. Yep. And in the end, they had us pull the end posts, the last sections of posts, put in the longer posts, and they bought the difference in material. So all we said was, here's what it would have been if you would have bought that correctly. I was so mad I wanted to charge him, because legally we have a right. If you guys set up your things and your processes correctly, you have, you can indemnify yourself of some liability or mitigate it completely. And that's what we had done. But at the same time, we knew this is never going to go well. These people, I just want to get the money out of it and leave. Yeah. So that's what we ended up doing. We pulled the end post, put in longer posts, told them it was X number of dollars more, showed them what it should have been. Right. Yep. So your end price should have been up here. This is still what you're paying for what you wanted. So I'm like, meeting above and beyond, not putting markup on it. I'm not doing. I just want the money and to leave and go do the next one and never talk to you again. And so that's what we did. We even put on the thing, like we voided the warranties. We did all these other things. Now some people would be like, oh, but at that point we knew that we're like, all right, as soon as we get the check, we're never talking to these people again. And I'm okay with that. Like, you know, I'm sitting there going, I'm fine with that from the perspective of knowing they're not going to be a raving fan, and we're probably won't ever talk to anyone about them because I have nothing nice to say because of the situation they put us in.
Sure.
But, you know, you got to figure those things out, and that's hard. And having a salesperson, like I look at that, like having my skills over years and years and years, you know, since college doing sales, I was able to communicate and talk to him in a way that I don't know if it was one of my fence builders that had just been doing sales for a couple of years, bro, no way that conversation is going the way it did with, you know, and then I'm not that good, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just sitting there thinking, there's no way I could have had any of my crew leaders have that conversation, because then it becomes a pissing match about, well, I'm right. Well, you don't know fence. And I'm like, hey guys, guess what? They don't know fence. They don't know your trade.
Right.
Like, it's not the customer's job. Is that not why they pay us? And the way I look at it is I charge them more now because I'm sitting there going, we're pretty good at what we do. Yep. I want you to pay me as much as I'm worth, you know, and my guys are worth. I got the best crews in town. Of course, it's not going to be the cheapest. We may not be, we're usually not the most expensive either. But with all that being said, like, there's an expectation level that we can provide. And it sets things up in the future. But yeah, it's funny. Scenarios like that, I mean, they can just get carried away quickly. So
and you see this conversation come up in a lot of the Facebook groups too, right? That says, hey, here's this scenario. What would you do? And 9 times out of 10, the answer that comes up a lot is, well, what does your contract say? Well, if your contract says this, then that's what you got to do. And that's fine. You can be right.
Right.
But what is the cost of being right? Right? It is 1-star reviews, which you can rebut. You can say, you know, Mr. Client, just like we talked about, we built the fence exactly like we agreed to build it. You can be right. Or you can suck it up a little bit and make sure it's done and it goes away. Right. So in your instance, you would rather be done with it and move on than, I mean, you could have been right in that scenario. You had the drawings they signed off on. So it's
right.
Your Honor, this is what they signed on. But what's that going to cost? Right. So it's going to cost negative reviews. It could cost attorney's fees and all this. If you have to go to lien the property and then they fight the lien, it could get expensive. So how much is it going to cost to be right? Or can you guys come to some mutual with this 9-gauge thing? We kind of both left it with, I was wrong, you were kind of wrong, but let's make it right together.
Sure.
Now his son's very fired up about this because I think they're his son's dogs. Anyway, his son's pissed at us no matter what. Like, he's done with us. He came in and he fired off. So his thing was, he doesn't like bias cuts. Is he believed that the wire should have been compromised. Like, well, that's the right way to do it. Like, they did it correctly when they cut the bias cuts. And anyway, we got into it about that. But anyway, we want to be done. But me and his dad kind of both came to the agreement, like, hey, we're kind of both culpable in this, so let's both come to a solution and move on. I've got another example where we had to stick to our guns. So we did a 6-foot ornamental iron around this. It's a really nice property. It's like 700 or 800 foot of it. It's a lot. And they signed off on spear tops, just like it was a Montage classic style, right? So this is what you're going to get. Emails with pictures. This is what we're talking about. I love it. That's what he got. Well, then he comes in, he goes, wait a minute. What? We were done. Now, and this is not something that went up overnight, right? This is right. He saw these panels for a while. He waited till about a month after. So we gave him net 30 terms. He was a business owner. So he asked, he's like, okay. So waited that 30 days and he's like, hey, this fence isn't how I wanted it. We need to come to a solution. Okay. Interesting that we're talking about this now.
Yeah, exactly.
What what are we talking about? He's like, I want it on site. I need to see you on site. Okay. So we go out there. He goes, see these points? He goes, deer are jumping this, and had a deer get caught on that. This needs to be smooth top. He goes, I want it smooth top. Okay. Let me get you some pricing, and we can do that. He goes, no. He's like, you should have known that this was surrounded by woods and that deer were going to jump and get hung on it. Because you should have known that this is on you. Well, it's not. So, and I mean, you can imagine there's a few panels involved in 800 foot of this product. So,
yeah,
no, like that's not. And then it's like, well, you can just, well, I don't know. It probably wasn't handled the most professionally on our end either.
One of those
he was like, hey,
court deals.
Yeah. He said, well, basically like, well, you can ask my lawyers for your money because I'm not paying you. Like, well, I've got lawyers too. Okay, like I'll have my people talk to your people or whatever. And it came down to, Your Honor, here's an email where this is the picture. This is where what he wanted. Yes, I love it. Please proceed. What are we doing? Like, this is the product. And we ended up winning that one. Now, he thrashed us publicly, just all sorts of everywhere, right? And that was the price of being right. But, we had to make the decision that I knew that was going to happen. This guy, he's very active in social media around town. So I saw this one coming. But we had to make the decision. In this instance, it cost less to deal with that than it would be to, try to make good on this. But anyway, so kind of both sides of the coin there. Like, we make good when we can, but.
Right. I think there's something to be said too. This is probably an offshoot conversation, but this is probably something that a lot of people don't realize is I actually like not having all 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
And I don't mean 1-star reviews. Of course, none of us want 1-star reviews. That's terrible.
That's right.
But I love if you could get some 4 and 5 or 4 and 3-star reviews.
Yeah.
Specifically 4, from the perspective of they took the time to say, hey, you guys did a good job, right?
Yeah.
But they also took the time to say, but there was an issue. Things didn't go completely smoothly. Dadgummit, Joe, that is what I want people to say, because this is construction.
That's right.
The chance that you're going to get a 5-star service on your job is, and we're awesome. I'm sitting there going, damn, I mean, we are the best. And I'm like, and I know for a fact something is going to happen where you're going to be mad at me. And so from my perspective, what I've started doing really since COVID, right, the last 2 years, is I will tell people, listen, your expectations of this project are going to be up here, but this is construction. We're dealing with laborers that I can tell how to do something, but they may not pick up their trash one day, right? So I set an expectation lowering it, but then I come in and say, but we're still the dadgum best in town. So like, this is what you're going to get.
Sure.
And you're going to want to feel that, I should have taken off all the soils from the job. Well, that's not what we do. We rake ours in. Now, some people right now are watching probably like, oh my gosh, you're a terrible contractor. Hey, that's what we've done for 70 years. So
sure,
it's what our market does, right? But that being said, but if you have someone from another part of the country where they take soils off, like anything excavated goes with the contractor and stuff like that.
Sure.
I don't know. And we don't know our clients to that level. And we're not going to get in the minutia of that, because then you would have 2-hour sales calls going like, well, so then we'll do this, and our galvanized ring shake nails, I know you want screws, but these nails are blah, blah. And I could talk to him about that in about 30 seconds, but I'm not going to sit there and get in the weeds of everything. But I like seeing honest reviews. And I always ask people, will you give us an honest review? Like, I want you to tell the truth. I want you to tell the public that it wasn't 100% easy. Say it was 95% easy. Say it was 90% easy. Say it was 70% easy, but still better than anything anyway. Because at their 70% over here, I still called 5 other contractors that either A, never showed up, set a time and never showed up. What
Yep.
are we doing out there, guys? Like, where are these people? They're not on YouTube on a Saturday watching this. I can guarantee that. But
That's right.
like that just pisses me off. And then, or go out and do an estimate and don't send back a bid. Man, I was out last night on my way home talking to a guy about our age, and he's like, so you're the 6th company I've had come out, and I'm like, I said, how much? I have a feeling you're about to tell me you don't have a bid, and and you're not getting a bid from at least half of them. And he started laughing. He's like, "You gonna send me a bid?" I said, "Bro, I'm gonna send you a bid just because I know no one else has bid in the damn job." I was like, "Of course." And then of course I go into my normal shtick about, listen, I'm not the cheapest, I'm not the most expensive. I know where I sit in the marketplace, and I said we never go for a home run on clients. So like, and I set the expectation for people because I want them to know, like, listen, I know what my costs are,
Sure.
and I know what money I want to make. It doesn't change. Like there's certain times on commercial, we can get into that, but commercial stuff, yeah, of course, that's a different world. But I'm talking for residential. If you know what your costs are and you know what you want to make on it, just go do that. Be you.
Right.
Have your standard. Figure out how you're going to price it. Whatever methodology, I don't care. But know what you want, know what you're worth, and go get that. And be confident in that. Man, there's so much. I mean, I sell jobs now. Like, it takes me 15 minutes to go through the job. I send it over, and it's done. And I have every ounce of information. And people are like, my guys are like, dude, how'd you do that? And I'm like, well, now I've done it so long that it's just, right. All right, we're done here. And like, and going through the experiences like what Sarah went through, like living that for years. When I came out of Ameristar after 7+ years of that, and now being the same amount of time in the field, dude, like, hey, if you're a manufacturer rep or distributor or something like that, you have no idea. As hard as you think you have it, the installation side is 10 million times more difficult. Like, I know after I left Ameristar, I was like, oh, it can't be that bad, and it is completely different. Completely different.
Yep.
And when you have, and for those manufacturers or those distributors, like, there are times, I always give my guys a hard time, everyone that I buy from, because they will know if I said, hey, I need a price on this quick, they know it's because, like, I needed to order that 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
They're like, oh, here's Nathan, last minute, blah, blah, blah. But I understand now. When I used to have those calls come into our teams over at Ameristar, we'd be like, oh my God, rolling your eye, oh, freaking, what a loser and stuff. But now understanding, if you run a slim ship, your manpower, you're not real heavy on manpower, dude, the time that we have to do some of these things, or if you don't have a purchasing agent, you're not big enough to do all those things. Like myself, I do everything by myself. Now it's a nightmare. But I say that from the perspective of looking at the numbers and understanding that, like, there are times where having those partnerships out there are super important, but then being able to have the partnership with the supply chain coming down, but then also how that relates to our customers and our end users. I mean, that is the difference between true success and not having any success.
Sure.
Is maintaining those relationships. But it matters. It matters coming from the supply chain as much as it matters how we do it on the production side and go out. But all that being said, I love people being candid in the reviews. And I've had people give me 5-star reviews personally. They're like, it wasn't easy. I had a very specific job. It was very freaking hard. I chose Nathan because, dadgummit, he was the only one that had a freaking clue. Oh, awesome. But it wasn't easy, but we made it through. It took twice as long as it should have, or twice as long as I thought of. Yeah, I thought it would take 2 weeks. It took 4. But in the end, if we do what we say we're going to do, if we have that integrity, if we understand that that's really what the customers are wanting, they're wanting a partner anymore, especially on these jobs. I mean, look how much fence costs right now, right?
Yep.
Like we got to treat it like it's not like a couple grand for your
Yeah.
backyard fence anymore. That ain't it. I mean,
Yeah.
it is 4 times as much as it was.
Well, that's what we were
just a
talking about
couple years
yesterday.
ago.
Average tickets are now $7,000 to $8,000.
Isn't that
It used
crazy?
to be 40. Our average ticket used to be about $4,500.
Yeah.
Now it's between $7,000 and $8,000.
Yeah. Yep. Same with us. So I mean, we're in the same boat.
And the projects haven't gotten bigger.
Yeah, exactly. They're
the projects are the same.
It's crazy.
So it's and that's part of the thing too, is trying to be cognizant of that. Like, listen, we are asking these people to trust us with a significant amount of money. Now, I'm not saying $4,500 wasn't significant. It
Right.
was. However, $8,000 is much more significant, right? So
yes.
we need to be cognizant of that. Like, that's part of, that's part of this conversation. Is I completely understand that you probably thought, so we'll get that. Well, this was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Completely understand. And if we were having this conversation 2 years ago, this number would have been a lot lower.
Exactly.
However, I drove past the gas station today, and gas is twice what it used to be. It's unfortunately we're having to pay more for everything. Thanksgiving this year costs a lot more. The cost of everything has gone up, unfortunately. However, I'm not buying a second home in the Bahamas, right? Like, this isn't us just raking in money.
Right. Yeah.
The costs are the costs.
And Joe, that's why I said that's one of the things that I changed since the pandemic really started, was being a lot more transparent with people, having in my personal shtick about I'm not the cheapest, I'm not the most expensive. Like, bro, I never said that. Like, I didn't care what you thought before. But now, understanding, I know how I feel looking around at where our economy is, where the marketplace is at, on just goods and services that I use. I'm sitting there thinking, no, I want to set a precedence of like people understanding, like, hey, here's where we're at. Yeah, like you said, we're not hitting home runs on all these jobs. I mean, the costs have gone up, but then also providing things like refusing what we've done. And I think I've heard you say this too, but we're in the boat now where we have refused to do like a treated wood post in the ground. And because of our environmental conditions here in Oklahoma, same, you're right up the road, so yours is pretty similar. And just like what you showed me 5 years ago, that one post that you put in, that shape. I show that your picture to clients all the time because I go, hey, listen, I've seen a lot of stupid crap with this wood, but I said, my buddy Joe up in Springfield has the greatest picture of all time. It's in my favorites on my phone because I want to show them the ridiculousness of getting the wrong product, especially at the market rate we're at now.
Sure.
Like, imagine, like, and this is what I would tell someone too. Imagine your $2,000 project a couple years ago is now a $5,000 project for the same thing.
Right.
But what if you got that wood and you paid $5,000 for that? Can you imagine the level of pissed offness you would be? I would be like, I would give you one. I'd be like that guy about the stupid deer fence, right? It's gutting my deers. Of course it is. What are you talking about? Like, I'm like, well, how is this my problem? But the same thing. But like wood, like the products that we use, that is a problem for us potentially.
Sure.
Because you could sit there all day long and say, well, they chose this, they wanted this, they wanted that price point. But did you bring the value of it, really explaining that?
Right.
And maybe that kind of wraps us back around to what Greg was talking about at the beginning of the show, right?
Sure.
Taking someone with that infield experience, but giving them the tools, like going through stuff like this.
Yep.
Like in this book, has information about wood, steel, ornamental, chain link, like. And everybody always thought I was silly for having this once I got in the field. But I said, guess what? I worked on a group at Ameristar where we did ASTM standards a long time ago. When Montage was launched, that's actually how I started at Ameristar. That's how I got in the fence business, was I was cold call selling Montage fence on the phone nationally. Yeah, that was so everyone's always like, how'd you get into fence? That's how I got into fence.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it was wild. I was like, I don't even know what a Montage is. but yeah, that's what I sell. And it's apparently it's amazing. And so over time, like over a couple months time there talking to people, I'd be able to talk to some installers and stuff and find out that, oh yeah, this is revolutionary. But I had just been telling everyone on the phone, this is revolutionary. This is revolutionary. You should check it out. It's revolutionary. How so? It just is.
So had a thought. I want to make sure I get it in here before I lose it.
Yeah.
About ratings. So I always think about how I interact as a customer, right? So I buy a fair amount of stuff on Amazon just because it's quick and easy and all this. I'll go to the review. If I know exactly what I want, I don't care. I want it, buy it. Yeah. But if I'm wondering, like if I'm comparing two different things, I'll look at the reviews and then I'll click the bottom. Like, let's start with the worst.
Yes.
What could go wrong with this? Am I okay with it?
Yes.
2-star, 3-star. How do they respond?
Yes.
That's the key too.
Yes.
Is how do they respond to this review? And so is the issue something that I'm willing to deal with? Like this could go wrong. That's all right. Like I see how this customer responded to that, and I think I could do better. Like, I'm okay with it. Also, how did the company respond? Right? Because that tells you more than the actual issue of, in this example on Amazon, the correct answer is we would love to make this right. Please send it back. We'll either give you a refund or we'd love to give you the replacement product because we know that this does not meet our standards. How can we make this right? That is the correct answer. The incorrect answer is, well, you're wrong because that's just how this product is, or no response. No response is worse. This company is just ignoring, like they're not open for communication, or, a slightly, less worse, we'll call it, is, that's how this is supposed to function. We said it in the description. You read the reviews. We're right. Okay. Like, let's see what else is in the market. Right. But to your point, if I see something that has 5 stars, that makes me nervous because that's friends and family. Maybe that's purchased reviews.
But what if you saw 5 stars and your initial reaction would be like mine, right? I would be like, well, and then I read a couple of them and you're like, oh, this is real legit stuff here.
Well,
they just haven't. Well, like, and I know in my own business interests and stuff, I've got things that it's only 5-star reviews, but if you've only been doing something for a handful of years, you may only have 55-star reviews because we're able to still make everybody happy because it's new, right? But that being said, I think so many people do that because I do the exact same thing you do. And 4 years ago, 4 years ago, we built a new house. We had ordered furniture from the largest furniture company here in Tulsa, right? And ordered it. We were excited. We had it budgeted. We spent exactly our budget, right? And one night, it was around Christmas, and we moved in April. My wife is just online, and she saw someone say something on Facebook that led her to the Google reviews. So she read the Google reviews, and the reason that we had bought the furniture was for their furniture protection plan. There was 400 1-star reviews about that furniture protection plan being absolute garbage, and the company every time had some lame, stupid ass. I mean, I was pissed reading it. I'm like, oh, if they talked to me like that, I'd be up there ripping the doors down. I'm like, just obstinate. No, it was shameful. As large as that company is, it was shameful that would be how they would respond to customers' legitimate complaints. And I said, Joe, and this is what I told my wife Ashley. I said, honey, Ash, if someone spent a long enough time to write this review, and they give you back that response, that way, you don't do business with that company.
Right. It tells you what you need to know.
And I said, we don't do business with that company, expecting one of the reasons we're doing it is for this program that they offer.
Yep.
And I paid for that. I went and got my money back within 3 days, got all of it back. We went to another furniture company here in town, found what we really wanted, spent $3,000 more than my budget. But dadgummit, dude, I did not care because I was so pissed that a company with a reputation like it has in town here for us, we got 1 million people in the Metroplex, so we're a good size, community, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, everybody shops at this place, dadgummit.
Yeah.
And all these, but there are so many hundreds of examples of people that felt inclined to leave massive reviews about just the inequity of the program and how they were treated and stuff. And I'm sitting there going, I can't spend this money. I can't. As a consumer, there's no way. But that's immediate. And I'm so glad, man, my wife ran across that. I was really pissed though when I got my money back, and then we spending more money than I wanted to spend on that furniture. But it's worked out well, and we're happy with what we did. But it was one of those scenarios, and this would be the same way in our business, or again, any trades. Like when we're talking about fence, sometimes I feel like people don't relate us to the other trades. That's why I like talking about all the trades when we're talking about our stuff, because it's all the same, man. Yeah. Whether we do concrete, whether we do plumbing, electricity, like, dude, we're all doing the same. We're doing the same type of work. It's either service work, install work, remodel work, redo work, whatever.
Yeah.
But man, just knowing like that people are watching and paying attention. I mean, I think that's the thing. And I think so many buyers today, like what you said, no one ever talks about that. Yeah. Like we just don't. But I do the same thing you do, right? And that's why I get fired up about it, because I'm sitting there thinking, there is thousands of people that right now are doing these things, and how we communicate. It's like, and even with our clients, I think it's the same way. I've been married I just had my 16th wedding anniversary. So I've been married for a minute, right? Yeah. And I feel like it at my age. I'm like, hey, we're doing pretty daggum good here. But with that being said, like, how much of marriage is a communication? Like, and it's not a one-way communication. It's a two-way communication. It's the same thing with our clients. It's how we communicate with them, understanding that it's a back and forth conversation, and then figuring out, what we can do, like we've been talking about, giving specific examples, but how can we make that go along so everybody can have what they want in the end, or at least success. Because I may get what I want one day, my wife may get what she wants the next day. Sure. But with that being said, like, did we communicate along the way so where there were undue expectations, or at least I understood, even if I said, Ozark Fence, I want to give them 3 stars, but like I see a 3-star review, but at the end of the review, it says, but they did that in the end, they did what they said they would do. I'm like, bam. That's what I want. I don't give a crap what rating you give me. Sure. I want you to say the truth, that you did what you said you were going to do. Yeah. That's all I ask for. Right. That's all I ask for. You don't have to like it. I don't care. Again, I'm not here to be your friend, but I am here to provide you a service to get paid the money that I'm owed as a company, and then move on down the road. If I say I'm going to give you a warranty, here's another thing. If I say I'm going to give you a warranty, give you a warranty, but give you a warranty for what we actually warranty too. Sure. Again, that's a whole other rabbit hole, right? But there is something to be said, like, stop using a chuck in the truck. Why do we cost more than chuck in the truck? We actually do warranties. We have conversations all the time, and I've had to train my sales guys about how do you talk to people about projects that you don't want? Well, you set an expectation about why, if Joe Blow came in here and he said all your posts, I go, so I can't touch your job. I got to tear it out and redo it. Why? He already did it. Okay. You really want to know why? It's like, I don't know how much concrete he used. I don't know how he put the posts in. I don't know how he did his concrete. I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know anything about him. Now, if it was someone I knew, all right, like if it's a company I knew and something happened, I'll probably call them and be like, hey, why are you not finished? Yeah, exactly. Like setting the post is the hard part. Yeah. Like, what am I seeing here? But that's a good example because that's come up over time. And
Yeah.
I think, especially on the sales side, if we can all set the precedence of explaining as growing companies or a established company already, if you provide a warranty of any type, whatever that warranty is, make sure the work you're doing for the homeowner can survive the warranty.
Yeah.
Which is
Right.
why we've gone on the wood posts, on steel posts out here. And, we've got tornadoes and high winds and stuff like that. But we were able to figure out with enough data as a marketplace that those of us that are large enough companies can provide a 3-year warranty on the craftsmanship of the project for using steel posts. Now, traditionally, it's just a 1 year, right? And why? Why was it 1 year? Because that's what everyone did. I don't know. It's like there's no rhyme or reason to it. But what we found was we had data finally in place that showed that if we put up a steel post fence, it's a stockade style with just 1x4 dog ear, nothing special. Within 3 years, the chances of something tragically going wrong that was beyond our control, or I'm sorry, under our control would be like, it's not going to happen. It's going to be super rare, right?
We did the same thing, and that's why we went to lifetime workmanship warranty. Just because, we were 5-year workmanship.
Oh,
and
wow.
then I asked our foreman, I was like, so how often are we performing repairs that are more than 5 years old that are workmanship issues? They're like, oh, hardly ever. If it's a workmanship issue, it's in the first year. And it's usually gate hinges need adjusted. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So of those warranties that are outside 5 years, and his point was, listen, if it's outside 5 years, it's usually not workmanship. Like they think it is, but it's usually something else. I was like, okay, but in that scenario, how often do we fix it? He goes, well, it's like 5 minutes. I always fix it. It took me longer to drive there and back than it is to fix that thing, so I just fixed it. Okay. How many of those got billed? He's like, no, I didn't bill them. I just told him it was a warranty. Okay, so we're offering a lifetime workmanship warranty, but we're calling it a 5-year workmanship warranty.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. It's because workmanship, like I say, workmanship, you're going to know within the first year if there's a workmanship issue.
100%.
So what's with the, why not? Why not give it a lifetime rating, knowing that
I like it.
Nathan, I hope, I live for the day that someone calls us on an 8-year workmanship issue. I want that to happen because the expectation is going to be, they say lifetime, but there's a gotcha in there.
Right.
Or here's also what I want. I want it to be the second owner of the house, because lifetime warranties typically are not transferable, or you had to register, or there's a lot of gotchas. I want the second owner of a house to call me 8 years later and say there's a workmanship issue. And the answer is they'll be out next week.
Yeah.
Is there a bill? No, it's a lifetime workmanship warranty. Now, if you were to happen to take the time to leave us a review about that process, I would love it. That would be a great payment for me, but there won't be a bill coming.
Yep.
I live for that day.
Yes.
Just because.
That'd be awesome.
Well, yeah, because the expectation is there's a gotcha in here. Right. The second owner, like we all know the lifetime warranties out there that apply to the first owner.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty safe bet because people move houses every 3.5 years on average.
Right.
So it's not a lifetime warranty. It's like a 3.5-year warranty. I live for that day because I want to be the guy that does it. And then, because then they're going to go tell people, right?
Yeah,
they're going to be like,
absolutely.
No, you're not going to believe this.
Yep. Yeah. Your customer service level is so much higher at that point.
And that turns that customer or that client, and on the second owner, they're not a client of ours anyway, but that turns them into a raving fan.
Yep.
Right. So then that puts them out there saying, you would not believe what they did. And, they're not going to say this publicly, but they'll tell their buddies, they're like, I told them it was a workmanship issue, but I actually hit the gate with my lawnmower as I was coming out.
Mm.
And we know that. Right. Like when you pull up and you look at how this gate is, you're like, I don't think the wind grabbed that thing and slammed it open. I think it got hit, but I'm going to fix it. I'd love to fix it because most everyone else would point that out to you, how that's not their fault. And there's a
Right.
minimum service charge. And like, really? So there's a minimum service. You're here already and you brought the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you could fix it for free because you thought it was a warranty, but now you're going to charge me for it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that seems weird. But anyway, live for the day. I would love that to happen because I know what we're going to do, and it exceeds expectations.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So
that's good. Great.
Just to put a bow on this, as a customer, I would trust a 4.8 star review more than I would trust a 5-star review.
Sure.
Right. Just because there's some realism in there. I think that's the overarching point here is don't be afraid of 3 and 4-star reviews. Answer them, right? Make right on it. Answer them how you would want to be answered. And know that a lot of times you're not answering that client. Like, if it's a 3-star review, they're gone.
They're gone.
In my experience, there is no turning that ship around. It has sailed. However, you're now responding to the people that are reading that review, that are reading that here's the problem. Here's what happened. Respond with empathy, right? I completely understand. Here's our perspective of what it is. Here are my offers to make it right. And you have to be able to come through if they accept those offers, right? Because that turns even more tragic if you don't. But you just respond how you would want someone reading it to read.
Yeah.
You have to be ready for that. But like I said, I think people in general would trust a 4.8 or 4.7. I want us to live 4.5 to 4.9.
Yeah.
That's whether it's Google, Facebook. Google and Facebook are 2 of the main ones, or Better Business Bureau, but they're an alphabet scale or whatever. So I want us to live in 4.8 to 4.9. Right. So anyway, I think that was a good point to make. It's been a while since we've said hello to folks, so let's go ahead and do that now. Let's see. So, scroll. You guys have been leaving comments. Thank you. Jane Catton said the Hoosiers are checking in from Florida.
Hey.
Okay. Are you lost? I don't. Hoosiers in Florida.
He's smart. He's in the warm part.
I was gonna say, jealous. Like, I love it, but are you lost, bud? I don't know. Good morning, Rachel. Glad to have you with us. And this is when we're talking about sales reps on training sales reps that visit job sites as they're being built. I think that's a good point to see how the sausage is made, right? Like, get in the middle of it to see exactly what the process is. And I like your point earlier that on the tricky ones, especially, like if there's some serious incline, I want them to go see what that process looks like. I want them to see that the dingo is not making it up that thing. So we got to dig it by hand.
Or you have to do bias cuts. You guys do bias cuts.
Right.
What is a bias cut?
Now, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to know until you see these things done. There's just no going back to Greg. Greg is right. There is no replacement for that technical knowledge out in the field. It's like it's any trade is that way.
Yeah, that's right. That's fair. And if she, if we had talked about bias cuts, which now she's familiar with bias cuts and why and how they're used, right? Like, she went through the training up in Oklahoma or Oklahoma, up in Nebraska. So she went through it and we cut bias cuts and all that, but it didn't stick on why she should explain that to the customer. Like, she knew that's what we would do, but now she knows when she sees it, she's like, oh, here's a teachable moment. Do you know that you can't actually take a straight piece of wire and rack it up a hill, because then it would be floppy at the top or the bottom, depending on it, whether you're on the upside or downside of the hill. And so what we do is we actually cut bias cuts, so it keeps it nice and tight throughout. It gives her that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Now she knows that there's that opportunity, but it's all a teachable moment. It's all learning, right?
Yep.
Let's see. Chris and Ellie Helms say, so my wife and I own a small company. We both go out to the jobs and bid them, and then our crew builds it. We do pretty good profit-wise, but looking to grow sales and leads. Any help? That's exactly what we're talking about, right? So let's see. So we both got to the jobs and bid them, and then our crews build it. So you guys are set up with at least crews are plural, or
Yep.
our crew. Nope, crew is singular.
Oh,
so
crew.
you've got a crew.
One. Okay.
So my question, Chris, would be, what would that free you up to do? Right. So I think that's the right move. Like I agree with it, but you have to think so that takes that off your plate. What does that elevate you to? And just kind of explain that. Like we love whiteboards. So I love to put that on a whiteboard. Like where does this map out to? Right. So Louis, I want to answer the questions, and then Nathan, I want to talk to you about finding these people. Right. So what do you do? So I think, Chris, we're going to come back around to any help on, growing sales and leads. Brent Mitch is with us from California. Appreciate that. He gave us love on both platforms. If you guys are watching and you'd like to give us love, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. That'd be super swell. Somebody gave us an angry face.
Oh,
what you did, Nathan? And it was Adam Sims. Adam, what's wrong, bud? Hope I didn't offend. Bo Butler says, hey, Joe, what size post do you use with your 11 gauge fabric? And if that is commercial grade in your market, what is residential considered? Fair question. In our market, 11.5 is residential. 11 gauge starts commercial. 11.5 is pretty much the majority of what we do in residential. Now, the guys that are using the home improvement store wire are actually using 12 or 12.5 gauge. So 11.5 is a nice step up from that. Now, we can do 11 gauge on a residential fence. It would be considered an upgrade, right? So what size posts? So on this one, it was 6 foot tall, 11 gauge fabric. We use 3-inch terminals, 2-inch lines, 1.5/8 top rail. We happen to have we purchased a ton of CS20. So those are all CS20. So that's why I feel good putting 9 gauge on it.
Yeah, that'd be a typical what I'd call a light commercial. I think there's different grades too, right?
Sure.
And especially for chain link, again, going back to if you guys don't know, there are standards to all these
there
things.
Is a manual.
Now, every market is different too.
Sure.
So you have to know your market as well. Like in our market, a light commercial would actually, we believe it or not, we just use the 11.5 gauge standard residential wire for light commercial. Okay. Because we have so much of it here, and it's tis for tat. But we use all 20 weight pipe. Like with my guys, I always use 40 weight terminals because I like to. When I learned how to stretch, I like the fact that it doesn't. I stretch the crap out of mine, so I'm like,
that's fair.
I don't want that thing bowing out and stuff like that. So I just give them 40 weight terminals. I don't care what kind of fence you're getting. The only one we don't do that it's on is residential. But if it's any type of commercial, I'll use 40 weight terminals. Sure. 20 weight everything else. Now you got the 16 gauges and all that stuff like that. There's so many different ways to do it, and just know your market and figure out what other guys are using.
Sure.
And then figure out what you want to sell and what you feel comfortable with doing. Like I said, I'm able to do if I use a 40 weight, so like a hybrid model, Joe. Like if my light commercial is a 40 weight terminal, like let's say I do a 2 3/8 40 weight.
Okay.
And then I do a 1 7/8 20 weight post, but I do a 1 5/8 16 gauge top rail, and then 11.5 gauge. Like some people will be like, "Oh my gosh," and I'm like, "But I mean, that's what we use. It's a deterrent." I'm like, if you don't like it for security, that ain't security. Let's get you into industrial grade, chain link or something like that, and go from there. So
and. So the difference between 11.5, 11, and 9 is how big of cutters you're going to use to get in.
100%.
Yeah, it's not going to change whether or not you get in.
That's right.
How much time are you going to spend? Now, sometimes that's important.
Little bolt cutters, big bolt cutters.
That's right.
Time. We used to talk about that at Ameristar all the time, Joe, was about what security and fencing is. And one of the security features of any fence, you don't have to like it. It's the fact is the time that it takes to penetrate through the fence line, which is why we don't use wood fences on some of them. I'm looking out my window. It's funny. I got all sorts of different fences right outside my office window, but we got a wood fence, a fence track fence, and a chain link fence. Yep. And they're not demos. That's actually on our own yard. And you're like, what the hell? I'm like, I know, right? The fence track's out front, right? the woods down one side that's next to a residential property, and then we got our panels and chain link around the rest of it. And but again, why? Like, what is the purpose of the fence? As a professional, as a salesperson, you need to understand those things.
Sure.
To go back to, and as much, I'm gonna keep calling Greg out because I love the fact that we started right off the bat where Greg was mad.
Yeah.
And checking out, but man, Greg's right. Like, you having that experience, or being able to have the experience within your team, or even within your, if you're new to the business and you haven't done it long enough to know, go out and talk to some of these competitors. Go out and I get it. When you're in the throw, like in the thick of it with your competitors, you don't want to talk to them. I understand that. All my guys in Tulsa, everyone outside of Tulsa loves me. Everybody in Tulsa hates me. That's fine. Of course, I would hate me too if I wasn't on my own team. But why I say that is, that's why organizations like the AFA are so important. So you can have candid conversations and teachable conversations with people from other markets that are regionally close too. Like, you get involved with your chapter, man. I mean, Joe, you know how it is.
Yeah.
Like, we're able to talk about things, about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To where you can never sit down. I'm not going to call up, Owasso Fence or Aaron Fence or one of these guys and like, hey, how are you guys doing? Oh, they're going to be like, oh, Nathan, piss off. I'm like, oh, I thought we're buddies. And we're buddies if we go get a beer.
Right.
I ain't telling you jack, and I'm like, all right. But if like me and you, I mean, 3 hours away, we can have a total conversation about and be completely candid, because we're not touching each other, right?
Sure.
Our markets aren't colliding at all. But man, like, how else do you learn? You ask questions,
right? We're essentially rehashing that conversation we had, right? Around the fire there's about 10 or 12 of us all just sitting there having this conversation. And like, I know that there's people out there that have feelings both ways, right? On the importance and the usefulness of associations in general, industry organizations. But this is one of the selling points for me, is that I get to attend, and this wasn't scripted. This wasn't anything like that. This wasn't part of the weekend. This was after it, when we just got drinks and sat around the fire pit, and you made a comment, and we're like, interesting. Let's talk about that. Right. Like, I think it's useful. I think it's incredibly helpful, the association. But I know some people have some different feelings, but anyway, that's my feeling. I think you're right. Being involved in an organization like that is beneficial for sure, for your company and for the industry.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Let's talk about where you find these sales professionals. So, well, let's just start there. That's the question.
Yeah.
Right. So where do you find them? How do you find them?
So I think a narrow-sighted vision for recruiting and onboarding people in any organization. And we're going to talk about our industry from the fact of, I expect most of us, anyone watching this, is going to be not where they want to be in the end, right? Like, because if you're already there, you're probably not watching Joe and me on a Saturday, or you're probably not even going to go back to the YouTube video and watch any of this crap, right? To be honest. But if you're at the point where you want to grow, you want to, you're in the growth mode, you're starting out, you've been around for a minute, you've been around for a while, but you have you have a place to go. I think we need to look at that as business owners and as managers. We're always looking for new people. Like, you're always recruiting. You're always keeping your eyes open, your ears open for people that provide great service. And, it's something that I learned when I was a kid, man, like in college. Like, I started sales in college. So that's how I got into the sales business, per se. And I was doing a lot of different things, but I was super successful because I had mentors that taught me, like, man, the ABCs, the old Glengarry, Glen Ross, always be closing, I couldn't have my coffee unless coffee's for closers, stuff like that. These faux pas things, but there's so much truth to it. From the perspective of, there's people around us every day that would love an opportunity, that if we don't talk to them, it's like anything. If you don't communicate with people in your zone, whether we're out at a restaurant, we're out shopping, we're, working with a service company at our own homes or businesses or whatever, there's people that are looking for an opportunity. And I often ask people if I think they're real sharp or something. I've asked a lot of people, man, hey, Joe, man, I really appreciate your attitude and your exuberance and stuff, man. Something about you seems different. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but are you kind of married to your job? Like what you're doing here right now, talking to me? And man, that'll stop people in their tracks and they'll be like, oh. And I like to use married as an example because that what that tells us as a society is we're talking about long term.
Yep.
And what do we know about the fact, right? The fact of today, most people will only stay at their job for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So for someone to answer that question, yes, is already going to be like it's not going to happen, probably.
Yeah. Right.
But you never know if that person, just like the way that I got hired at Ameristar, like how I got into the business, like they were so shocked at my attitude at 23 and the way that I spoke to them that they made me interview 4 times before they hired me. And the reason why I finally asked them was like, what was the problem? They're like, we didn't believe that you were for real.
Sure.
And I was like, okay. Like, I was, it's kind of a little disheartening at first because like, I'd tell my wife, man, these guys are just jacking me around. They keep bringing me up here. But they knew that it was such an important opportunity and they didn't want to just bring in, and especially with my age, of course, they were looking at like, I mean, this guy's really young, and he seems like, he has a desire. And there was a book written, dadgummit, let me find it here real quick. It's called The Ideal Team Player.
Okay.
And it is, hold on, let me find, I don't know who it was written by. It was written by, there it is, Patrick Lencioni. But The Ideal Team Player talks about the 3 key characteristics, and this is the best example, like the best broken down way of all time to hire anyone on your team, but to think about anyone on your team in any organization, whether it's your business, a volunteer organization. Like I've used this stuff at church, leading a couple hundred volunteers at my church and stuff like that. Is there's 3 aspects that you have, 3 attributes that someone has to have to be a successful or an ideal team player. You got to be humble. You got to be hungry, and you got to be smart. And there's how that's broken down is it's pretty simple. You're looking for someone that's humble enough to say like, "Hey, I made a mistake." You can be like, what's funny is I always look at that. I struggle with that one because I'm not. Sure. I'm a humble person deep down, but on the outside, I'm pretty. I'm very competitive, so I tell people, like, oh yeah, we're number 1, so, yeah, I don't have a problem saying that because I'm like, hey man, we worked our butts off to get where we're at, right? And we're still have goals and expectations. Sure. And we're still growing and doing different things, right? But humble as far as like being able to sit back and to internalize things and take maybe constructive criticism and the desire to grow, right? Sure. And that kind of leads into the next one where you're hungry. And hungry, man, dude, if you've got someone on your team or you're hiring someone that is not hungry, I have seen this in organizations time and again. That is a massive detriment to people that have a desire to expand, get better, maybe make more money, make more time, make more, and time, I mean by like freedom of time, right?
Yeah.
Like work hard to have whatever your goals are, man, and
Sure.
and understanding what your goals are. But these things, when you're hiring someone, a lot of people have never heard these things ever asked, like especially in an interview. So I like to be like completely outside the box with an interview because I want to really know who that person is deep down and how they fit in these 3 attributes. So I can see if they're even going to be a fit. Because if you're not hungry, like that's my thing that really gets me is I've had guys on my team that weren't hungry. And man, that kills me because I am like on fire. Like where I'm like, let's freaking go, man. Whatever it takes. Like I love my customers knowing I'm going to provide them a premium service and knowing that I'm not getting paid today for that. But I've had guys that don't think that way. And honestly, I've been able to figure out over time that it's a hunger issue. Right? You're just not hungry enough
to go that extra step that I feel like it should have been, but my hunger
Sure.
level is a lot higher than theirs, right?
Yep.
And then the last one is smarts, and that doesn't mean like intellectually smart. That means like emotional intelligence, like just being able to how you communicate with people, how you control your attitude, how you control your anger, or if you're stoic, how you control that. Because there's going to be times where you're going to be in a conversation, and if you're like me, man, dude, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Like I'm super fired up. I'm sure everybody's figured that out. It makes it a lot of fun. It does make it hard sometimes because I do wear my emotions on the sleeve. So I could be like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Like freaking out, like, what? How did everyone think this was okay? And they're like, oh, we don't know. But I've got some of my guys on my team that are super stoic. So you can imagine our conversation, especially out in the field, where I'm like, this is dumb as hell. Who thought this was a good idea? Well, Nathan saw the, and I'm like, speak up. But again, that's the internal conversations that we're each having. But we know each other, and we've been able, because we have smarts. My guys have smarts. I have smarts. We're able to bring it on a level where we're all on the same field and having those conversations and exchanging those ideas, concerns, whatever it is. But those attributes, man, and that book is so good about hitting those things, especially. But that goes back to what you had a conversation 2 weeks ago or whatever with Matt Warner, and I've heard a lot of people talking about this in today's economy, in today's marketplace, specifically about culture. Yeah. And I've got a buddy that actually he's like a leadership coach, does like personal one-on-one coaching stuff. He lives 5 houses down from me. Nice. He's been super successful with it, just blowing up. So we talk all the time, like we're like in the neighborhood, like walking, doing different things, and we'll see our kids are playing or whatever. So we talk all the time. And even in his coaching, he found that in today's market, it's led him back to the culture side of things is really where his coaching has gone. Compared to before, it was like a lot more performance coaching and stuff. Sure. But he was finding that so many of his clients just had this void of culturalism in their businesses or in their lives, like not even knowing like how they wanted their families to be run, how they wanted like their households, like what do we value, guys? Like where are we going? Like what? And all these things play. You have to know those things. Like for Caleb and Ellie, I think you have to know all of those things up front, really before you plug other people into it. Sure. Because it will provide that level of like consistency that I think is so important today, with a world that is massively inconsistent, with a world that wants to tear everybody apart. I mean, cancel culture is alive and thriving, whether we all want to believe it or not. Yeah. But that being said, like we've got to find people that are evenly yoked with us and want like can see our vision and see our desire and our passion and click onto that. And like I told you yesterday, Joe, like it's like we've got a little red wagon and we're towing this thing behind us. Yeah. And all I need is someone to hook their wagon onto mine and be like, hey, I see where Nathan's going. He's going somewhere. I want to go with him. I'm going to hook up with that cat and I'm going to drag them. As long as they stay hooked up, their butt is getting dragged. So you're either walking along and helping pull, or I'm dragging your ass. One way or another, it's going to happen, right? But that being said, like, so making sure that these people in our teams, as we're bringing people on, fit culturally is so important across the board.
So, and I need to get with Sarah to see what the name of it is, but so we go through personality testing, essentially, is what it is. So, and part of that is, and what sparked this thought is you said emotional intelligence. That's one of the aspects of this is, not necessarily like institutional intelligence, right? Or like, secondary or, higher education intelligence. Yeah. Because as we discussed yesterday, I lacked that. I did not do well in that structure. Right. Which, that's a different conversation, but I don't know that that's that important. But emotional intelligence is, right. So, and I think this comes down to also, like you said, the stoic, the non-stoic, case in point, this 9 gauge, I know which crew I'm going to send to go do this, because I have crews where if you tell them that bias cuts are wrong, they will spend several hours explaining to you how you're wrong, right? They will give it to you in a demonstration. They will explain it to you. You're wrong.
Right.
I've got and knowing this guy that said that, like they will butt heads all day long, and it will not be a fun experience for anyone.
Right.
I've got another crew that when they're told that bias cuts are wrong, it will be more like, that's interesting. Well, this is the way that meets the standards that we install fence. This is how I'm going to do it. I completely see where you're coming from, but you have to know as a professional, this is how I build the fence. Right? Like both of those answers are saying the same thing.
Yes.
We will be putting a bias cut in this.
Right.
But one of those starts an argument and the other one doesn't. Right. And it's knowing who your people are. You know, now the team that would start that fight are also the crew leader is also a very high performer. Like you put him on a big project and he will chew it up and spit it out. Like he is that guy. So it's kind of knowing where your strengths and weaknesses lie on each team member too. And what strengths and weaknesses you need in which position. Right. That's huge too, is knowing that, you don't need someone starting arguments in the management team. Right.
Yeah.
But for a crew chief, as long as now there are limits to this, right? But he works really well in that position. He can drive his team very well. Yeah. So, and he's on the commercial side, right? Where when we're talking commercial versus residential, those are two very different conversations.
Completely.
Commercial needs to know, are you going to do your job correctly? Yep. Are you going to get it done on time? And are you going to make me look good?
Yeah.
Those 3 things. They will put up with a lot, right?
Yep.
And they would probably appreciate his no nonsense, right? Where they said no bias cut and he's like, you're wrong and here's why. They go, oh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Go for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, those are 2 different worlds to live in. And like I say, he crushes large commercial projects. So that's who we need in that position. We don't send him to residential projects because he's not a big feelings guy, you know.
I think, Joe, as we're talking about that, I think one thing, a resource for any of them, I'll give a shameless plug to my boy.
Sure.
His name is Kyle J. Sullivan, and he's on Instagram, and he's got a podcast on Apple, Spotify, all the major networks called Unleash the Champ by Kyle Sullivan. And man, that is exactly what he talks about. And I think if this is something new for anyone watching the video or doesn't really know much about, like you just mentioned, the personality test, there's so many out there. There's the Enneagrams, there's the Myers-Briggs, there's all these different things, but there's so much value in having that information. Someone like Kyle, who's a professional in that space, and teaming up with them or just asking them questions. I mean, there's so many things you can learn about this that are really vital to success. I mean, and I use, like I said, when I was doing the My Fence Life podcast, we were talking about some of the techniques that I use on prospecting. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned that earlier. It's the same thing when I am talking to hiring someone. Like if I'm interviewing you, Joe, I'm going to find out, like, is he technical? Is he action oriented? Is he really structured, like detail oriented? Or is this guy like a relational, like, and I can figure out how you can fit into that because like my relational, like I've got a dear friend of mine who's very relational focused. Like that's his priority is relationship. But how does that work in sales? Because in some types of sales, it would work. But what we found, what I found over time is I've been able to hone in the fact that his technology side of it, like his technical side is very low. Like he doesn't like that stuff, but he can learn it. So we've kind of tailored his experience to really capture the essence of his like one-on-one interactions and how people just love him. They're like, oh man, this guy is a freaking stud. Like I just like his attitude and his exuberance and stuff. He's selling fence, but I feel like he's my friend. And I'm like I said, if I come out, Joe, and was bidding you a fence,
you're not going to have that feeling for me because I don't
Sure.
give a crap. I don't want to be your friend today. Now, if you become a client, like, bro, we're going to be bros forever. Like, I love all my clients. Yeah. But,
Sure.
but up front, I'm not looking to make extra friends. That's not really my gig. I'm looking, again, to provide that value, to find that problem that we're trying to get to. And that's what we were able to do with him, was that actually helped propel a lot of my problem solving selling, was someone like him being polar opposite of me, where it's just constant fight and struggle of like, damn it, man, go sell. I'm like, I don't give a crap if they don't like you or not. And he's like, but what we found was people were like, they were so engaged and enthralled with like just the way he handled them, and they felt so respected and stuff. And that's awesome. And of course, they wouldn't say different but that was the emotion that was drawn out of their interaction. Where mine, it was like a very technical, like, God dang, this guy, how long have you built fence? And I'm like, a month. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I've been around it for 15 years, but we get into brass tacks. I'm sure Joe and hundreds of you watching would be like, yeah, I could outbuild Nathan in the fence any day. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I will outsell the piss out of it over you. That's cool. Yeah.
It's knowing your strengths too.
Exactly. And I said, you got to have it's a give and take. Like, my guys, when they see me out in the field with them, they'll now stop me because they understand what I do. They'll stop me and be like, is this really the best use of your time? I go, no, it's not. But y'all are behind, blah, blah, blah. And they will pick up the slack they're like, hey, man, we need you doing your thing. Like, we do not need you out here hooking up a gate operator. And I go, well, the reason I'm out here hooking up a gate operator is because y'all moving too slow. It's amazing, that conversation. And oh my gosh, I love all my crews.
Yeah.
I mean, the production level that we get out of our guys is stupid. We pay them awesome. I mean, I'm just so proud of the fact of what we've built over time. I mean, I was telling you yesterday, not to get in the weeds of numbers and stuff like that, but I mean, project wise, I mean, it's got to be close to 1,000 projects this year, with like 6 crews, and I manage all of them from the ground up. Like, I sell the job. It's a lot of work, dude. And people are like, how in the hell? I was like, I don't even know how we do it. I have no idea how I do it, but like, it's not 1,000. Actually, I think it was like 729. So it's still a lot. It's a lot.
So,
but okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'll finish that thought, because like, that being said, so let's say 750 to round off the number. But like, that amount of production, that like, how do you stay on track of that? It's knowing your strengths, knowing where everyone fits in the puzzle. And we've had to work towards it over time to where everyone understands, like, and my sacrifice to all of them is my phone rings all day long, every day. And it's just, that's the pain point that I have to deal with, until we decide to hire some help directly for me. But what's funny is, which people would never know, because you hear those numbers and you're like, damn, dude, I mean, it's a lot. Yeah. I mean, that is a lot for one person. I mean, I know man, the Lord has blessed me with the ability to multitask, and I've heard a lot of things over the last couple of years, especially because of COVID, like mental health type stuff, where they're talking about, there is no multitasking and stuff. Sure. Yeah, they need to hang out with me, because I don't know how my brain keeps up with some of these things. Of course, I make mistakes and drop things, but you know what I'm saying? Like, but I was able to, because my wife stays at home with our kids, and she actually does a lot of work that no one in the world would ever know. But she's doing these little things. So I'm like, I can't say that it's like completely on my head when I know she's picking up a little bit of the pieces and stuff like that. But how important that is. And then when we're talking about any type of environment, any partnership, right? Even in our workspaces. And this is something I've talked to my buddy Kyle about, is finding the balance of like how you make it work with your employees or whatever. And I'll use that in my own scenario at my home. In my house, my wife does the bulkhead of making sure the house is running. Sure. Because I'm out making sure the businesses are running, right? Yeah. And that's the trade-off that we have. So when she's able to kind of bleed over into my side and give me a hand, and I'm able to bleed over in her side and give her a hand, like, that's the trade-off and the deal we made. Because a lot of people are like, well, why doesn't she work? And what? Oh, she is working. She is working her tail off, man.
Yeah.
But it's just in things that you wouldn't see. And taking care of the house. I mean, man, we could get, that's a whole nother thing, but how important it is for us to take care of our homes. And me knowing that, but knowing that that's not my strength. My strength to lead my home is one thing, but to really take care of it, man, I was so blessed by the Lord to get my wife who had that desire, who has that passion to make sure that boat is going in the right direction. And then I'm the captain that is not at the wheel, right?
Yeah.
I'm the captain that shows up on deck and it's like, hey, we get here, we're going the right way. Hey, honey, back on the wheel. Let's keep going. And I'm going down below deck working, doing something else on the ship, right?
Yep.
And so in our businesses are the same way, bro.
Yeah.
Exactly the same way.
Well, that's the thing is, and so the joke at our place is like every holiday, like extended weekend reminds me that I've got the easy job. Like for me running this place and doing the YouTube and running Ozark Fence and whatever else we're doing, to me, that's easy. Running that house, because we're kind of in the same scenario. My wife runs the house and keeps the family headed the right direction. Like, God bless her, because I couldn't do it.
Right.
I do not have the patience for those kids. Like, I love them.
Yep.
Kids, if you're watching, I love you to death. However, I don't have the patience. I just don't. Right. So, how fortunate is it that when I show up at home when whatever time of night I show up, there's a hot meal ready to go.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And kids are taking baths and the house hasn't fallen apart. Like I know me, if I was in charge of that house, like nothing would run on time. The kids would not get to school on time. They probably wouldn't get picked up on time just because it's like, so you're right. That is a job that is thankless and I could not do it.
Yeah. But it's the same way in our businesses, Joe.
Yeah.
It's the same way in any of our businesses. If you feel like there are zones or spots that are not being touched properly or not being taken care of, it's because you don't have that person that's yoked for that role, for that need and desire. And I think, again, when we talk about cultures and stuff, I think that's where we need to start approaching that in growing businesses, is understanding like they were just asking a little bit ago, they want to expand and grow. What do you need to do that?
Sure.
And it's going to change for everyone, but like if they have one crew, and I was thinking about this when you were talking to him and it kind of answering that question, but if you have like one crew, you got to remember that your production can only do so much.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's another thing we don't talk about in any trade industry is like, what's the capacity of the production that we have today? And then don't outsell your production.
Yeah. Well, that's important. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, because how many guys, dude, we've got that in our marketplace. It just drives me crazy. I go into distribute. Let's say I go into Binford or something like that. So I roll into Binford Supply here in Tulsa, and a good guy that's done fencing for 35 years. He's in there. I'm talking, what's up, brother? Hey, what's up, man? And he's like, man, we are killing it. I'm 8 weeks out. Oh. And then I'm sitting there going, and I look at him and I go, hey, brother, what are you doing today here? He's like, I'm picking up material. I go, please don't tell me it's on a job you sold 8 weeks ago. He goes, well, yeah. I'm like, bro, you're doing life wrong. You're all screwed up. And he's like, I don't know what you mean. And I go, yeah. So you see what I'm saying? That's outselling your production. Because you're not controlling your costs. You're not doing all these other things. It should be business. That's a whole other podcast conversation we could have. Because holy crap, like I think that having a panel discussion on that is like vital. Again, the only problem is all of us that would talk about these things, we're already doing it. It's everyone else that's not watching this that's doing the knuckleheaded stuff like that guy, where you're just like, what are you doing, bro? Like, don't sell a job, when you can't control the costs. And we're all experiencing that now. You sold a job a couple months ago, and now you're going to put it in for the price from a couple months ago. That's dumb. You're losing money. And there were some jobs where he figured out he lost money on. And I'm like, and I hate that for him because this guy's got experience
great experience. But again, having experience in the field, having experience in sales, having experience in any type of business management in operations and stuff, it's different. And you gotta find people that or programs that synergize that energy and give you the right tools to put your tool belt. Because if you don't have them, the only way you're going to learn in anything in business is you're going to learn by trial and error. And I would rather learn by everyone else's errors and not make them myself, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I look at where I'm at now, man. Dude, how awesome is it with the technology that we have, with programs like yours, all these other guys like Contractor Fight and all these other things, where there's so much information out there that you literally could start in a trade business today and have success from day one. I'm telling you, man, I think there are people right now and in next year with whatever the economy is going to do.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, but whatever it feels like it's about to do and where we're going, there's going to be people that are able, because of being lean, nimble, and new, if they go in with the right attitude, with the right tools, and take all these resources that are out there now, dude, we're going to see, like I said, we're going to see kind of like what Mr. French Florida did.
Yeah.
John, I mean, look at that, freaking from 0 to 3 million in 12 months. I mean, you're like, everyone's like, wow. And I'm like, it's because the experience behind them.
Sure.
They did the right things and they have a plan. They put the plan in place and they worked the plan. The plan came from a lot of heartache from a gajillion years of experience up there up north, brought to a new area, and they're able to just kill it from day one. And you're like, that doesn't make sense, but it does make sense.
Of course it does.
And that's why I invest watching things like yours on Saturdays. Put in headphones, listen to this stuff, like just absorb as much as we can, so that way we can have that expert opinion, that expert advice coming into us, just to make us better. Because as good as you can get, that will be the level of your success.
Sure,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that scares me, talking about guys getting in that can be successful now, one thing that scares me is I think a lot of people have gotten into in businesses in general, contracting business, not just fencing, but contracting business in general over the last 3 or 4 years that have experienced nothing but an incredible economy.
Sure.
Like I had someone come at me in the comments of one of the clips. They're like, you're telling me that 6 months ago it was a great economy? Like, that's a joke. It's not a joke. Like, and understand, I'm not talking about the overall national economy. Like, that's not this conversation. What I'm talking about is for the last 5 years, we've consistently set records in our business of success, right? So our local economy is going strong. There is money in the economy being spent. What happens when that tap maybe doesn't turn off, but reduces?
Exactly.
What happens if there's less money in our local economy and these guys and gals that have started a business in the last few years that aren't running lean because there is just so much money in the economy? What happens when they get stuck?
Yeah.
Right. Like what happens when the money isn't as free flowing? I think there's a lot of guys and gals right now running purely off of cash flow, right? Just because cash flow is so good right now, they're running off of cash flow alone. What happens when that catches you? You know, where you're running a system that's you're running a company that's a bit bloated, having too many systems, paying too much for systems, or just not having your costs in line because cash flow is so good. You can cover that by taking more deposits, and just running ahead. I am afraid that's one thing right now that I'm afraid of is that could be part of a greater collapse of just businesses in general not being lean right now. There's bloat in the system. You know, we've kind of been having this conversation internally for a while of we need to get lean. And most teams are like, well, we're already lean. Well, we need to tighten the belt some more. Like, I think we can do it. So we take the P&L and just start assigning people P&L line items. Like, you figure out what we're overspending on here and let's get that down. And I think there's a lot of like curious glances because it's like, again, cash flow is good right now. We don't really need to, but we will maybe. And guess what? If we don't, how good of a position are we in? You know what I mean? Like if we really tighten up the belt a few more notches and the economy rolls on for another few years, we're even better. We're in a better position now. It's a win-win. But anyway, I don't know where I was going down that rabbit hole. But like I say, I think everyone's business would be better for at least having a realistic look through your P&L, figure out, are you running lean to mean or not?
Absolutely. And again, that goes back to the tried and true method of every construction or subcontractor business for forever is understanding your costs. I mean, I think I've heard us talk about that more at our AFA events than anything. Tony Thornton talks about it all the time because he's right. That is the difference between really, like, at the end of the day, being successful or not is understand. Man, if you understand your costs, everything else makes sense. If you like you, Joe, you're talking about your team evaluating your costs, so you're understanding your costs and where can we trim it down.
Yeah,
you got to know those things. You've got to be looking at it. You got to be aware. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I just signed up for Job Nimbus.
Yeah,
and man, awesome program. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to take a new CRM, to pay what I'm going to pay. Same thing with the phone system. I looked at a phone system. I saw the Simply, how it integrates with Job Nimbus. I think we're going to do that in one of my organizations. And I'm like, but bro, that's a lot of money on a month, but I haven't been paying it all. So now I'm like, man, this is, $500 a month for all this stuff. Holy crap. I mean, it's a lot,
Yes.
And like you said, but what does it do? Like, what do those tools give us? Is that going to make us competitive? Is that going to keep us on track of where we're going? And right now we're going like this, right? So are we going to stay on track? Even if it starts to level off, is it going to make sense investing that money?
Yeah.
And then, like you mentioned a couple weeks ago, going through and finding I think those recurring charge ones are the most in the process of doing some changeovers at the end of the year, going into next year right now. One of our servicing customers said, oh, hey, by the way, you're going to start receiving a $30 a month bill to be PCI compliant for your transactions on merchant services. So PCI, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. I'm like, okay, what? I'm like, this boggles my mind. What are they talking about? Well, apparently, because of all the hacking that's occurred over the last couple of years with stealing credit card transaction information, there's kind of a, the Fed has for banks, they have the FDIC. Your money's protected up to $250,000. Where this PCD or PCI or something like that. Yeah, PCI is the same thing up to 100,000, but it's the same concept. So I'm like, okay, I was like, so I have to pay for this?
Yeah.
Like, I have to pay for insurance for my merchant services? Like, I'm like, well, what I found was a new merchant services that we were using to do some of our credit cards and stuff like that charges. But an old merchant services was just taking care of the costing for you as a benefit. So I replied, so then I saw it said they were going to charge us $100 a month if we weren't compliant. So if we opted out of the program, they were going to charge the organization $100 a month.
It's kind of
because
crazy.
You have to be PCI compliant one way or another or not. And again, you can imagine, I'm reading these emails going, I have no idea what any of this means. Yeah. All I know is, so you're telling me I'm either paying $30 or $40 or $100.
Or $100.
I don't have a choice. And then and I really didn't want to pay the $40 or $30, whatever it was. And I was like, I don't like any of this. So I called the merchant and said, I think we're going to go back to the other merchant services. Because this whole concept, like they said they got it covered. They're going, oh, no, you don't worry about it. We'll take care of it for you. I go, And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not sure how I feel about this with you guys, knowing that if there's other companies out there like mine that are small, family-owned companies, and they're not paying attention, you're willing to go $100 a month by April. If I'm not watching this email chain, they're going to start charging them, or they're going to start charging them a monthly fee to pay for this when there's other vendors out there that are going to do it as a service for free.
Well, and especially if they're telling them their options are $30 a month or $100 a month, you go, well, I guess $30 a month. I mean, that's a lot less than $100 a month.
So it makes me think that's what they're expecting people to do now and next month. All of their clients are just going to roll over and say like, "Oh, we'll give you $30 a month, $40."
Yeah, they'll go, "That's cost of doing business."
Right. And I'm sitting there going, "The hell, no!"
Yeah,
I'm offended. I'm like, "Hey, man, I just brought all these other services on. There's no way I'm going to pay another $30, $40 a month. It doesn't, in the grand scheme of things. What does it really matter?" But man, I am frugal on things like that, where I'm more apt to be aggressive. And I like listen to you all the time. You and I are almost the same on that stuff. I'm like, if you need to buy something, just buy it. And the guys are like, "Oh, but if you buy it and it's dumb, or it was something you didn't actually need, I am gonna like unhinge." And so no one does anything because they're like, "Well, I see the value in it, but I don't think Nathan will see the value in it. I should ask him first." And I was like, "That's fair. I'd rather have that conversation than like this scenario where you have a vendor just unload costs on you, and you're sitting there going, wait, what are we paying for? Something that's free with your competitor? Well, I'll go back to the competitor."
So in terms of payment processing, so through Job Nimbus, we use WePay, and they actually have an option where the client pays the processing fees. So,
okay.
And that's what we do. And we put it in the email. So Nathan, you say, "I've given you a proposal, you're accepting." You send me an email that says, "I love it, let's do it." And I say, "Great. You're going to get a couple things. One, you're going to get an electronic contract to sign. It's just like DocuSign, because everyone's used DocuSign. Just like DocuSign. Click and you're done. Also, we'll be sending you an invoice. Once we receive the deposit, then we can schedule your project." Now, there is a link. You can pay it online. However, there is a convenience fee associated with it that goes to the processor. We don't have any part of that. To avoid the fees, you can also bring a check by or put it in the mail, just understanding that we will schedule your work as soon as we receive that deposit.
Yep.
The amount of checks that get driven by our office has increased significantly since we started doing that. Now, some people still pay the fee to do it online. They say, "I don't want to drive by. It's worth the 3% or whatever it is. I'll pay it. Just do it." But and that's fine. Like those are both fine options for me.
Right.
But now we don't have credit card processing fees clogging up the profit and loss statement, because I believe Sean King talks about this. He's like, it kind of muddies the waters on your P&L, because that's money that's coming in and immediately going out. Let the processor take it, and the option is you can just run a check by. I mean, people aren't as busy as they think they are. Sure. If you're looking at 3% of $8,000, you're like, for that kind of money, I'll drive a check by. But you're not going to schedule the work. I'm going to bring it by. Can you schedule it? Not until it gets here. It's all first come, first serve, based on when we stamp the check. That's the only way that I found that's fair for everybody.
Yep.
Okay, well, I have lunch in 45 minutes. Can I just bring it by then? Absolutely. And then we'll schedule it right then. No problem. Like I said, people get a lot less busy when they just understand what the plan is.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you got to check that out. WePay is through Job Nimbus.
Yeah,
there's another processor too that they keep sending me emails about, but you have to absorb the credit card fees. Like, gotcha. So there's guys that'll argue that. They'll say, "Well, you just raise your cost and then you pay the fees," and that's the whole muddying the waters with the P&L. Yeah. Now you've got some income coming in that's immediately going out. Just cut it out completely. It makes your P&L a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
So
like it.
One thing we do is we watch this week's video, and I think you might get a kick out of it. We've got a local minor league affiliate to the St. Louis Cardinals, which is Springfield Cardinals, and I went by there, and we talked about their netting. So I thought that was kind of an interesting conversation. Let me pull it up now. All right, everybody, welcome back to another video. What did we do? Well, I know it's a private. Oh, I didn't. So I'm a fence guy that's trying to do. I'm actually going to take this down real quick. There you go.
I was hacking in your Google as you were going. Hey,
that's fine, because that's not an account. That's the problem, is that's not an account we use anymore. So
that's funny.
But go ahead. Let's see here. Again, fence guy trying to do YouTube, which the crazy thing is I already played this beforehand, but expert show. I think this happened last time too. Guys, I apologize.
Oh no. I know we've ran down a bunch of rabbit holes today. Rabbit holes. But I hope there's some value that people are finding in what we're talking about, and some nuggets that we can, share back over time for sure. Because I mean, there's so much to all the things that we've discussed today, Joe, that it's hard to slam it all in 2 hours. But I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to cram it all in there.
Well, and that's a fair point. I'm glad you bring that up. Where if you guys do have questions as you're watching this, drop them in the comments below. After we watch this video, we can do a quick wrap up and answer your questions for sure. All right. Content. See, the problem is it's a private video because it's not out yet. It's part of the benefit here, though. YouTube is I'm trying to show my people early.
Right.
Or give them early access. All right, here we go. Let's try it again. All right. We're going to share the screen. We're going to share the screen. Maybe. Well, we're not. So I guess watch out for that coming up. And we'll just go from there because it's going to take too long and I don't want to do it. So, well,
technology.
Yeah, that's the thing. So there's 2 different YouTube accounts logged in right now and they're not playing well together. So I want to say it's 2:45, might be 3:45. You'll see a video come out and it's basically me at the baseball stadium talking about the netting. So
cool.
All right. So let's do this. One of the questions I had for you, Nathan, was you mentioned 1,000 projects a year. What does your admin staff look like for that? I'm always curious.
Let's do. It's not. So mine is not fair to do.
Okay.
Let's do Empire Fence Tulsa as an organization.
Sure. That's fine.
So
I'm always curious just to hear how people handle that kind of work.
Yeah. So overall, in the whole organization, we do. I want to say it's right around 3,000 projects a year, 3,000 jobs. We have 3 admin on the phone. We have a general manager that also is admin. And then our president as well. He does some work in there. Then there's 4 salespeople.
Okay.
2 of which are managers. One's me. And I do everything on my end of the business alone.
Okay.
But everyone else runs the rest of it. So
Gotcha.
They do. Yeah. So I'm a third doing all my own stuff. And then the rest of the 2/3 is that kind of team. So that's more realistic. Like I said, my part of it is not realistic at all because it works. Again, it's not duplicatable. It's not scalable the way I do it, and that's what I figured out, which is why I'm kind of doing my own thing because with that, but I'm still integrated into all the decision, all the decision making on everything else because of my experience. But I handle all my own projects, and do that. But with the rest of the team being involved and responsible for a lot of that, like I said, we've got 3 on the phone, 2 on the phone coming in, like reception level, admin, and office manager, a GM that's only doing admin stuff, never on the phone, and then.
And when you say
the sales guy,
the GM that does admin, so what are they responsible for? What part of the company?
Yeah. It's the GM title is probably
not a correct title. That's
Okay.
a whole nother conversation we've
Okay.
been getting into recently.
Sure.
But nonetheless, there's someone else there on the admin side
Okay.
handling some of the nuance day to day for a company the size of ours.
Yeah.
He's handling back end crap that
Gotcha.
I
Kind of
would
infrastructure
never
type
want
stuff.
to do. Yeah, I'm like, yeah. Accounting
Okay.
and working with our accounting team and stuff like that. So
Yep.
all that level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So that's always kind of where my head goes, is because we're constantly kind of evaluating how we do things, and because there's pain points to everything,
Yes.
right? Like, let's start there. That no one has it figured out,
right?
You know what I mean? Like 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think we can all, and that's part of what this show is we can all learn from each other, right? We should be learning from each other, and that's what makes, I think, these interviews so valuable. Is like, this is quite literally me sitting here learning, because I've got some questions about things that we can implement in our business, and like what we're doing works. It works well, but I always think it could work better, so we've got some pretty big plans coming up. And when we're talking about 5-year plan and beyond, like, we've got some big plans. How do we execute on those? And I think it is setting up that team in the most efficient manner to handle the business, so that it starts running like a machine, that when you feed the contract in at the top, it starts filtering through, and then at the very end is a finished product, and it's beautiful, and the customer loves it. So what gets us from point A to point Z most efficiently, right? What does the team look like that handles that? All of that stuff. So, and we've got some pain points right now in that there's some frustrations. It's working well, but I think we all can recognize in our organization that it could be better. Right. Like, we're focusing on communication right now. Like, I am so obsessed with over communicating. It's not funny, because I think communication is everything. My firm belief, because so frustration is the result of unmet expectations.
Right.
So a better client experience has less frustration. Okay. So then we need to set proper expectations. Right.
Yes.
And you cannot set expectations once and be done. Right. Like, you have to keep maintaining expectations throughout the process, to where is it weekly touch? So in the summertime, we might be 6 weeks out. Now, to your point earlier, we can do that because we inventory material. When I sell a job today, like, we've got the material on the lot. It just gets pulled, set aside, not physically, but in inventory. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so we've already locked that price in. I'm good being 6 weeks out, because my cost 6 weeks from now is my cost today. But that customer, in a residential example, that customer gives us a deposit of half today to lock their space in for 6 weeks from now. And again, like we were talking about earlier, average job size could be $8,000. So they're giving us $4,000, and then they're just going to hope we show up 6 weeks from now. Now, would it be a better experience if every week they get an update? Hey, Nathan, it's Friday. You know what we're going to do. Here's your weekly update. Your material is still on our lot. Like I told you, we'll do a brief recap. Like I told you last week, we've got your material set aside. If you want to come touch and feel it, come on down. I'd love to show it to you. I'd like to meet you early. You put something corny in there. This week, really business as usual. Still got that. We're still a few weeks away from calling USIC and having them mark your underground utilities. This is going on. That's going on. If you got any questions, let me know. So now you're getting weekly updates. You're like, wow, like, who does that?
No one does.
No one.
Yeah.
No one does that.
Yep.
No matter what the trade is. Right.
Yeah,
so if we can do that, okay. And now every week we give them the opportunity to hit reply with a question they've got. Right. Whatever the question is. Hey, just wondering, is this weather going to affect? Nope. We actually build weather days into our schedule. So shouldn't affect it. Shouldn't be in the keyword. Right. But that's a lot of communication, though. You can imagine, especially at your scale, like, what does a weekly update email look like? Like, in terms of just workload, that's someone, right? Just cranking out emails. And and those emails are put in draft, right? You're not writing those emails all on Friday. You're starting Monday, putting them on draft, setting them to send Friday morning at 8 a.m., and you're just keeping them up to, whatever that looks like on the back end. So that's something we're working through.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it takes
I think, exactly. And I think that's, it's a pain point that we've experienced, because when we transitioned over to a new CRM 3 years ago, in that process, there was all of the automated emails and text messages that you could add into that. So as an organization, that's what we had done, under the guise of, this is customer service, right?
Yep.
So now as a team, you got some people like me that I'm like, is that really customer service? I mean, no one's touching it. It's just sending out crap. I mean, and it's good crap. It's good.
Yeah.
But but it is. It's just sending things out. Canned information, canned responses. You're talking about that next step.
Yeah.
But I understand it would take resources. It would take someone to do that. And so on the flip side, we do it the other way, where we've got these canned responses going out. The problem is what we've experienced is we have not seen an uptake in the way that customers react to the canned communication. The client today is smart enough to realize that our canned things that are being sent out are not really customer service, if that makes sense. So don't fall into the trap that we have, even as we're growing and blowing up. I mean, we could sit here as a team and have this conversation. We have this conversation all the time. Is this really customer service? And some people in the organization say, well, they got nothing before, so now they have an abundance of something.
Yeah.
To which where someone like me is going, but the something we have is crap.
Right.
Or it comes across as canned, which,
well,
again, a savvy buyer
is,
today could take that as a negative and be
bingo.
like, oh, okay, you guys are so big that you're sending this out to everyone. You're right, and we are that large.
Right.
So
that's
what's the balance point? It's hard, man. I get it. I mean, and we haven't in our growth, we have figured that there are other ways that we could use our resources right now to continue the production levels, to allow our customers to continue to get the best pricing, because like in our market, our buying power is so powerful that everyone calls. And I would love to sell your products. Honestly, I bet you would. I would love to sell this stuff too. Yep. It's a lot of money, right? Especially as a vendor, you're sitting there going, I need some of that business. Okay, great. Well, here's what that would take. Here's the expectations. Here's what we need delivery-wise. Here's what we need price point-wise. We're going to be savvy buyers. And so in our organization right now, one of the key points that we've talked about, even more so than getting me help on my team, was the most helpful thing across the board for a company right now might be actually hiring a purchasing agent.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because we're at that level of when you're moving millions and millions of dollars of inventory and material, I mean, and the amount of vendors that we've been able to utilize, you got to think, again, 65 years in business, there's a lot of, even now, we have actual mills that we buy from the Northwest in the United States that we have a peer-to-peer relationship with.
Yeah.
No one else can get that because they've known us for a gajillion years.
That's right.
But they're calling us saying, hey, we got another truckload of wood. Bring it on down. We know what the wood is. We know we know that forestry department in their mill. We know how they mill it. We know all these things. No one else has access to that, which also gives us a proprietary line of material and all this. So that's a whole nother scale level.
Sure.
Most people have to make the choice, younger in business, or for most businesses that aren't aged as much as like an Empire Fence, is you're going to have to make the decision of which distributorship you're going to be purchasing your material through.
Yeah.
Whether it's one of the national distributors, whether it's a regional distributor like an Ozark Fence, or whether it's going to be a box store. Those are kind of your three avenues for, procuring, any materials in the supply chain right now.
Yep.
But like I said, we have some relationships that are very old, and it's like comical. Like I started buying from these guys in the 70s, and they still send you wood, and you like see this wood, and you're like, I've never seen. Like we have our own names for some of these pickets because you've never seen it. You don't know what but we know it's a type of cedar. It's not an import. It's not a incense. It's not a a Western red. It's like an inland Eastern white cedar, blah, blah, blah. But it's very specific forest, specific spot, specific mill that brings it in. They bring it in a 7/8 dog-eared picket, and no one can buy it except for us and them anywhere around here. So you're like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, right.
But you won't. You may have an opportunity to do something like that. Most people won't, unless you've been around for forever. So then again, but that's where someone like having a purchasing agent. What if you could, as a company watching, like, what if you could buy that same wood from that mill, that secret little mill that we do? Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. But you literally need a person to find these buys, to find these people, to coordinate all these things, to coordinate pricing. And I do a lot of that stuff on my own with my projects. I do a lot of that at night because that's like the time after my kids go to bed. If I'm hanging out with my wife, I usually always have my iPad on my lap, and I'm sitting there crunching numbers and figuring stuff out, and seeing where the market's gone on different things. Like where are we on steel today? Where are we on wood? Where are we going? Watching the futures markets and stuff. And if any of this doesn't make sense, you have a growth point to work on, because that will dictate so much success in the future of how to buy. Again, it goes back to the thing we talked about 30 minutes ago. Control your costs. If you can control your costs, you can control everything.
I watch these YouTube channels. They do watches, and like high-end watches. So, and their whole philosophy is the money's made in the buy. Right? It's not made on the sell, it's made on the buy. And I think that's something that we need to get into is the money's made when you buy your materials right. And I could see the value of a procurement agent simply from, we're in the middle of a buying round right now, and it's like, I've got to go. So chain link wire, there are vendors that have a massive amount, but it's priced accordingly, right? So now we're procuring chain link wire from 2 or 3 different vendors at 2 or 3 different price points. So now we're trying to blend. So how do you figure out your cost of wire to your customer? Well, you've got to blend those, right?
Yeah,
based on, but it can't be, you can't just take, round numbers, $4, $4.25, $4.50. You can't average those because you're not getting exactly the same amount from each one. So it's tricky, but a procurement agent, that's their job. Like that's not my only job. Like, so we're building out a wood shop right now, a woodworking, or you call them a woodworking shop, whatever the professional name is. We're buying a bunch of woodworking equipment. We're building out a wood shop. And so that's how I spent a few hours of my day yesterday. It's also, we've got some plans here. So, but having a procurement agent where I say, your job is to find the best price on these items and buy it all, right? Like buy the most you can for this price point. And then once you buy out of that price point, let's talk about bumping it up. How much can we buy at that price point? But one problem we're having right now is when you run out of space.
Sure.
So, there's a running joke right now where I'll walk out into the shop and be like, I know what you guys were thinking. We could use some more pipe. And I've got some good news. They're like, no, that's not. We were just talking that we've actually got too much pipe and we can't really turn around trucks in the yard anymore because you keep sending us pipe. Oh, well, I gauged that wrong. Bad news, we got more pipe. Like, we got a truckload of 1 3/8 coming, and it'll be here in 2 weeks. So see you guys later. So we're kind of in that issue right now, but it's all problems, right? Like that's we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's like the problems never go away, right? They change, and sometimes they're more manageable. Like some problems are good problems. Now, good problems are still problems, so you still got to figure it out. But that's the name of the game, and that's what I enjoy. Like in our organization, that's what I enjoy is just figuring out the problems. You had said this earlier. Like, can I go build you a fence? Yeah. But you're going to want my guys to build it for you because they are better at building fence than I am. They're more efficient.
Absolutely.
You're going to be happier with their fence than you are with my fence.
Sure.
Just in the same way,
100%.
like we all have our roles, right?
Yeah.
I enjoy watching baseball. Sometimes you'll find a pitcher that plays other positions. Now, they are not going to play it very well, right? They are specifically trained. A third baseman can sometimes play first base. Now, they're not going to play it as well as they were at third base. You know, on and on and on. Like they're skilled positions. Can they do other stuff? Sure. But they're usually good at that one thing. So, anyway.
It's good.
Nathan, per usual, we are overtime. But that's just kind of the I ought to have the end time on these things as like a question mark. Like
I like that.
We're going to shoot for 12:30, but you don't know. Sometimes. So we've got a guest coming on next week that's as a national author, and so I'd say him, I was like, we start at 10, we end at 12:30, and their response back was, we are not doing 2.5 hours. Like Sean has 30 minutes. Like, I get it, but we're going to shoot for 2.5 hours. But
I love it.
Anyway, but when you get guys that are like-minded that, you know, and the folks that are watching the channel, like there's a reason there are 10 people still watching this is because we enjoy this, right? Like we thrive on getting more knowledge and figuring out how can I apply that knowledge to my situation.
Absolutely.
Right? That's the name of the game. It really is.
Yeah. And I think that's all the knowledge share that we have out there is just trying to, you know, if we get better and grow ourselves, like I see so much value in growing other people in other parts of the country, hell, even growing my own competitors. I mean, I would love to see my market elevate itself because all that means is the better all of us are, the water rises, right? And we heard it a million times on your channel. You know,
but that's
all ships rise with the rising tide. Right?
Yeah, the rising tide raises all the ships.
Raises all the ships, right?
Yeah,
so
that's exactly right.
It's and especially in construction where you know, you're always going to have startups. You're always going to have what I call the chuck in the trucks and stuff. But the faster we can help them along to legitimize what they're doing, understanding of like, hey, you know, don't just make money today to pay your bill today because that won't be, you know, I was talking to a guy and this might go back to that one couple that said something like an hour ago about what's their next step or whatever.
Personality.
You know, like selling today for where you're going to be tomorrow. So like if you've got a margin set up right now at their company for one crew and themselves, mark that up to where you're paying 2 crews and yourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And so your margin's higher. It's going to be a little bit harder to sell, sort of. But then at least you'll know that you can establish a rate that will cover 2 crews. Then find that crew. As you're doing that, like it's like you're setting up your market. And that's how, you know, I have a lot of people all the time ask like, well, how many crews you guys running? Yeah, so we run like 20 crews, right? And there's like 14 fence crews and then like 6 like gate crews. And you're like, that's crazy. That is, especially for our market. But if you think about it, it's a lot. But if you think about it, like on my side, I just use 6 crews. So 6 of them are mine. But you look at it and you're like, okay, well, like, how does that break down? Well, I figured out years ago that when I was starting off with an established brand like Empire, and this was 6 years ago, I knew that I couldn't sell to where I was at day one because like the guys that I had subcontracting at the time, I didn't hire any crews in. We decided we go the subcontracting route so I could control all costs vertically and really manage these things and watch them. But that helped us establish like a rate and an expectation in going through. And then what it did was the end of year 1 going into year 2, I had some guys approach me, right? And then from 2 to 3, it was a done deal. The best guys approached me and they all went, yeah, we want in on this. You know, we see where your guys are going. And now they've all gone with us in the process. And I mean, these guys are making so much money that most business owners would be appalled. But I'm like, but why? Like, why would I pay these guys that kind of money to install fences because we're able to do it. We're able to provide them and their families with a great living, and and have this high expectation of like, man, I really want you guys to remember, like, you're getting paid a premium to provide a premium service and a premium installation. You have to do your best. And it weeded out all my garbage.
Yeah.
Employees, contractors, everything. And dude, I've got stories we could talk for 3 or 4 hours about. Hilarious stories that you'd be like, that sounds like a nightmare. And I'm like, it's funny now, we're so far outside that I'm like, it really was. And it was bad, but you're like, but anybody's going to go through that. You just have to know, but you have to know what your expectations are and work towards them. But that being said, for the growth, what I figured out, and I've proven it in a scalable model, was selling above where we were today to make sure that we had the margin to grow into that. And then almost like a slinky, right? Like, it starts to come in and you pull the slinky out, and what's it do? It accelerates to that point. Then you pull the slinky to the next spot and it accelerates to that point. And that's again, anything on the sales side coming in the pipeline or the production side coming out of the pipeline. I think that's a huge takeaway for anybody watching this, to know that if you can manage those things, or at least understand and have an expectation of that, man, that's everything for sure.
Absolutely. So I'll make another point. I know we're over time, but if I don't make the point, it'll go away.
It'll go away.
So last week we sat down with everyone, with our entire team, and we had a strategy meeting, basically a couple hour strategy meeting with everyone. I mean, I'm talking the guy that just started last month is in this strategy meeting, because so Sarah made a point to me. So we had an executive meeting with me and her and my dad, and her point was, I don't know where this is headed. Like I kind of have an idea because we've had some conversations. I don't know what our 5-year plan is. Like where are we going and how do you want us to get there? I really thought we knew this. Like, I really thought we'd been over this. And she's like, well, we've had like some conversations about it, but it seems like every time you've got a different idea. Like, well, that's fair, because usually I do, right? Like on any given day, I've got a different idea. But so we had a meeting, all hands strategy meeting, and basically whiteboard, here's where we're going. Like, as of today. Now, also understand there's a reason I'm writing this in dry erase marker, right? Like, this is subject to change. However, this is where I think we're going. This is how I think we're organized. Like, we've got some ideas here, right? And it was unintended my intended consequence was everyone just knows where the ship's headed, right? Like, I don't know how we're going to get there, and I don't know if that's actually where we're going to end up, but this is the plan. So, but what I had a couple guys come up to me afterwards, were like, hey, I'm in this part, but now that I know that you're wanting to build out that part, I want to let you know that's what I want to do. Like, I think I could excel my inventory guy. So we've got a guy that his skill set is inventory management. He came from a national, like, that's his skill set. He wants to run the wood shop. He's like, hey, you talked about building a wood shop out in the next 6 months. I loved wood class. I take on projects on my own time with like woodworking projects. I want to run that for you. Fantastic. You bet. Like, let's talk about that. I had another guy that, and so this guy he's kind of our yard guy / our just kind of a free player, right? Like, he'll just kind of go from the fabrication shop to the yard he fills in where it's needed. He's like, I would love if all I did was cleaning and staining of fences. Really? Like, yes. He's like, I do some of the pre-staining. That is what I love most, is when you give me a pre-staining job, because I can put in my earbuds and I can just listen to a podcast and just do stain boards. I love that so much. Noted. Like, I am glad. Right. I'm glad to know that, because what's funny is, so he said that kind of in a smaller group setting. One of the other guys like, I don't like that. Do not put me there. I want to go do this. So like, okay, well, this is a conversation we need to have, because if you plug people in where they want to be, they'll be happier. And happier people are more efficient people. It just is. 100%. Right. Yep. So that was kind of the clip actually this week on Wednesday was, does company culture affect efficiencies? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
100% it does.
Yep.
Happy people are more efficient people. So that's kind of a gold nugget I had was you need to occasionally sit down with a team and have a strategy meeting, all hands, right? Like, so the easy thing is to have an executive meeting, right? Like, so in our case, it was me and my dad and my sister. Now, also, we're adding the executive team. Another thing we did, so we're bringing in the heads of each. So the head of fabricating, the head of production, we're going to have an executive team, and we're all going to have quarterly meetings. But that's the easy way, right? Just pull in your heads, like your crew chiefs or whatever, like have an executive meeting. You need to have all hands meetings, somewhat regular, and regularly can mean different things to different people. But to say, this is where we're headed, this is how I see us being organized, and go, right? Like, what do you guys think? What am I missing? Right? Like, that's the key. That is the mission of my executive team is we're going to have quarterly strategy sessions on a Saturday when none of the phones are ringing, when nothing's going on after this live, right? So where we just sit down and hammer out SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. What am I not seeing? Right? Like, I am one person with one set of eyeballs. What am I not seeing? But also having these team meetings where we say, hey, guess what? The direction changed slightly. So I know this is up here on the dry erase board. Erase that. We're going to write in something new. This is where we're headed now. Like, this is a tweak to the heading, right? So in your analogy with the ship, we're still headed to North America. However, now we're going to go there through the Caribbean, and we were going to go north. Now we're going south. Like, but we're still headed that direction. It keeps everyone on board. But like I say, the gold nugget for me was those two guys saying, hey, now that I know where we're headed, I want to get plugged in there. Like, I have the skill set. I can do that. I love doing that.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Because I'm going to need somebody to plug in there.
Yep.
Right. So why not plug somebody in there that loves doing it? So now I know, all right, this position is filled. This position, when we get there, these are my two positions. So, and this all ties in when you said to Chris and Ellie, like, know where you're headed, right? What if you had two crews? So the Chris Cardone thing, or the Grant Cardone thing, is 10x, right?
10x,
so if you were 10x what you are today, what would you need to be doing? What team would you need? What resources would you need? Build to that. And then guess what? You show up there, right? Like, when you know what your mission is, you know how you need to go there roughly, you know who you need to take with you to get there. All of a sudden you end up somewhere close. And maybe it's not 10, but what if it's 9.2?
Right.
So that's all part of the mission, or that's all part of the plan, is showing them the mission, right? Is getting there.
Absolutely. It's great.
Nate, let's wrap this up and put a bow on it.
Buddy.
The question I like to start asking, I caught this from another podcast, not an original idea. Success is how much luck and how much hard work?
Oh, as a percentage? Oh, man.
Or, yeah.
I would say, that's kind of coined from the phrase that Thomas Jefferson's famously known for saying, I find the harder I work, the more luck I seem to have, right?
Yep.
And I think that's true. I would say it's probably a Pareto's principle type thing. It's probably 20% luck, 80% hard work. Yep. I mean, that seems like, the Pareto's principle has been around for a long time. It's picked up a lot of traction in the last 20 years, right? We all know what it is, how it works. But, you start thinking about it and you're like, that's about right. 20% of my customers take 80% of my time. But 20% of my customers also pay my bills.
Make 80% of my revenue. Yeah,
80% of my revenue. So, but with that being said, I think timing is everything. And the thing about timing is you never know. But if you put in the work, I was so fortunate to get into this industry, working for Eddie Gibbs over at Ameristar Fence.
Yeah.
And man, that guy, like, working directly for him on some special projects when I was still real fresh in the business and stuff. I mean, just the command and the things that I learned from him especially through his leadership team at Ameristar at the time. I mean, it's invaluable to take that out in the marketplace now, because I mean, that guy, he sold his company for $500 million. I mean,
Yeah.
people are like, what? A fence
Yeah.
company? I'm like, I know.
Which now it
crazy.
seems like a steal.
Right. It would be now,
Yeah.
and they've only grown and accelerated since that time when I left, which was at the sale of the company. And, you're just like looking at it going, but he had the one thing I know that I always enjoyed, and I talk to my guys about this too, is speed of business. That was always Eddie's mantra. So his philosophy from the time he had a fence company actually before he started Ameristar, but his philosophy was always that acceleration, that speed of business. How fast can we do things? And that was Eddie's game. I mean, he would just outwork everyone to death to be like, damn, this guy is just gonna bull rush you. And what's funny is being out in the field now. Like, I mean, I guarantee you could talk to almost all of our competitors, and they do not like the fact that I will outwork them to death. But that was something that I learned younger, in my 20s working for Eddie, that I was like, man, there's some luck there.
Yeah.
Some timing in the market. You look at some of the things that they introduced, like when they started the fast fab product in the late 80s, no one had ever done a pre-manufactured ornamental panel. It was still stick built, right? It was freaking wrought, real traditional wrought or rod iron, right? And that's what it was. So in the late 80s, he came up with fast fab. First, it was a solid panel, and then his cousin, who was the lead engineer for Ameristar, they came up with a way to notch all of them so you could rack and bias the panel. That's cool. Well, then what people didn't see was in the 90s, there was a little company called Walmart that was expanding across globally at that point, rapidly, rapid fire, right? And Ameristar just happened to have the international specification for every garden center and every super center.
Yeah.
So that brought in revenue
out.
out the yin yang, right? Then allowed them to get into high security products. They invented the impasse system, started looking at potential crash trading type things. But through that process, as that product line starting to take off and stuff like that, the team was able to find some revolutionary technology, bringing in robotics, bringing in a new coating system where traditionally it was all TGIC powder coat. Right now, they were doing an e-coat process, which they stole or really borrowed, right? The technology from the automotive industry.
Yeah.
It was a newer, updated process. But that was just like just like when he started, all of that started at Ameristar in the 70s with Woodgate hardware. No one had powder-coated Woodgate hardware. Eddie was pretty much the first to bring that into the marketplace. Because they were like painting them, like dipping them in buckets, and painting. That's the way everyone did it.
Sure.
Well, there was a powder coater here in Tulsa because a lot of our industry in Tulsa is aeronautics.
Okay.
So planes and stuff like that's been a huge part of the aerospace industry. Has been a huge part of our economy for decades and decades and decades.
Sure.
Well, powder coating was just getting launched and stuff like that. So he borrowed that technology, first powder coated gate hardware, and then powder coated the panels, and then powder coated this. Well, when they found the e-coat technology from the automotive industry, built that building right before I came over to Ameristar and launched the Montage product.
Yeah.
A welded, rackable, biasable, coated, like fully coated inside, outside, every side. Every connection point, from the manufacturer was coated, had never been done before. No one even thought it was possible. Well, Eddie and his team figured out how to do it. And like I said, the luck is the timing of all these things happening.
Sure.
And you can see this, but the hard work that team took and, long before I got there, but even seeing where they're at now after, it's all of the people over time that put in the investment of time. And Eddie taught us too, as an owner, as an operator of a business, like of a growing business, man, if you take care of your people, especially your good people, and pay them well and incentivize them well, give them great benefits and stuff, that goes so far. I can look back now, Joe, and say, I didn't appreciate some of the things that were done for me when I was at Ameristar till I didn't have it anymore.
Sure.
And once I was gone, like the reality of like, all right, I don't work here anymore, but holy crap, like this guy, made it a point that he was going to pay for my whole family's health insurance. And I was young, so I didn't really use it, right? I had little kids and stuff, whatever. But now looking back at it, I'm like, he was paying premium level, like $1,500 a month for health insurance for every employee that had been there over 3 years. I mean, that is that's not normal.
Right.
But he was able to build something, to make something there, to make a product line. And it doesn't matter how, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter whether we're out making, installing fences, putting in gates and operators, putting in, like an Ameristar manufacturing, distributing, whatever it is. But we're able to put in such hard work profitably over a period of time that he was able to give back to the employees. And that's what it's all about. And as things change, right, as we get bigger, most companies want to corporatize everything. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what we originally started the whole conversation about you and I are the same way, like with institutional learning, academics and stuff. I always tell everyone, I'm a 3-time college dropout. But I am blessed by the Lord to have some skills and the aptitude to learn. I love learning. Did not love learning in college. Like, it was not my jam, right?
Sure.
But man, dude, like, just if you got the hard work, you put in that unbelievable effort, take a little bit of that luck, that timing, and it's going to look different for everybody. But I think those things synergize together. Anybody can make it. America is still the only country in the world, I firmly believe, and as a vet of serving for the country, man, dude, I mean, we are so blessed to live in the time we live in, to deal with all the nonsense that we deal with every day. Sure. But on top of that, just to have an environment, a free capitalism economy where we can make and accelerate as much as we want, as much as you're willing to risk.
Sure.
And
right.
I think that is the biggest thing, for anybody watching is, you make your luck, but at the same time, I was like, the timing never feels right, but it's always right. Right.
Yeah.
So that's my nugget to leave.
Yeah. There's a thing about that, like being in the right place at the right time, like that's luck, but it was hard work that got you to be at that place at that time.
Yep.
Right. So no, I think you're right. 80-20 sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah. 80% hard work and 20% luck getting you to the right place at the right time.
Yep.
I like that a lot. Man. Nathan, thank you so much. I do
Joe,
appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
I really do. Guys, I hope you got a wheelbarrow of gold nuggets out of here. I started taking notes because I was like, I've got some things to look up on here. But I hope you guys did too. If you're watching this on replay, still leave your comments or questions in the comments below because I watch the comments throughout the week. If you guys want to find a shorter clip of this 3-hour and 7-minute interview, check out the Joe Everest Clips page. It's linked in the comments below on the YouTube broadcast, and we'll go from there. For now, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors. And I'll see you guys next week.